wood stove all winter long.
I just don't know if people are gonna,
I hear it.
so I gotta print it. I know.
Good?
Thanks for chatting, Jerry.
All right, let's see here, we're gonna call this meeting to order, the Durham Select Board. I have a full quorum tonight, and, well, we all rise for pledge of allegiance, please. Okay. We have any amendments to the agenda this evening?
I don't have any amendments, I just wanted to make one point after re-watching the last meeting, that the people that are sitting on the back side of the table are very, very difficult to hear. So if everybody wanted to pull their microphones closer to them,
Yep.
that might help, right? And then if maybe, Jessica, I know that last time Devin was texting you, so
Yeah, I'll
please
let
feel
you
free
know.
to like wave at us if anybody's letting you know that they can't hear us. Okay.
Usually I'm accused of shuffling my paper too much. Okay, thank you, Heather. All right, anybody here for public commentary? Mr. Puritan,
Good evening.
how are you this evening?
My name's Tom Puritan. I live on Day Road. Some of the subject that is actually, it's actually on your agenda tonight, it's about solid waste committee, the potential of developing one. One area that you may not be aware of is with subdivisions. And because I'm not complaining about subdivisions, I'm just thinking about the way things are set up right now with subdivisions is, because I live right across the road from one, there are 9 houses in it, and there are gonna be 3 more houses in it. And those 9 houses bring all of their trash down to the curb. And I guess the question that I have is there any restriction from Casella going into subdivisions and picking it up curbside at each individual home? It's not an issue right now, and they haven't complained, nobody's complained about it. But once this winter comes, and if those other 3, this is only one subdivision in town that we're talking about. You could look at Boy Hill, there are multiple houses going in up there. Once winter comes and plowing, it could become a big issue as to getting access in and out of those subdivisions if you're gonna have multiple containers there. And I know that Casella, granted, it's a couple of years down the road, Casella brought information to you people that they're gonna be providing 2 64-gallon containers. And I re-reviewed the meeting that they had with you, and they stated that those have to be 3 feet apart. It's because the arm is gonna go around and grab it and tip it over. And I totally understand where they're going. Not saying that we're gonna continue to do business with Casella, but that's where the industry is. So again, my concern is there any restriction from Casella going down subdivisions?
We normally don't have interaction during the 3-minute, but yes, those are very good points that you made. And yeah, we do need to consider that as we're moving forward during the negotiations with whoever we contract with moving forward.
But then the concern there though is not, and I know our contract is extended right now, and what about this winter? Winter's gonna hit us before we know it, and I'd rather see, and I think you guys have always been proactive versus reactive, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention to hopefully be able to address it prior to it becoming a problem.
Good.
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Alan.
you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Public comment? Sir, come on up.
I'm Tyler Hutchison. I live about a mile down Hallowell Road. I wrote some things down because I'm not so good off the cuff. I'm on a number of committees and groups in town, but today I'm just speaking as a community member and Durham resident. I've heard a disturbing opinion echoed, I feel, mainly from elected and appointed town officials and not overwhelmingly from Durham residents. And the opinion is that Durham's historic buildings and structures need to serve a purpose, specifically a financial purpose, in order to be cared for by the town, as if these places are not worthy of town funds for preservation as historic landmarks to tell stories of our past community and town. That somehow the long, fascinating history of Durham's historic buildings isn't worth saving. The lesson seems to be is if history serves as an indicator that if the town owns a building, unless it serves an immediate need of the select board, the building falls into disrepair. The question begs, what about the wants of the residents that the select board represents? With regards to the Union Church itself, it was inducted into the National Register of Historic Places on August 2nd, 2001. Still repair quotes were brought before the select board at that time, and nothing has been done. Cost of materials and labor have escalated, as has the continued extent of rot since regular maintenance has not been performed. Any building, historic or modern, needs maintenance. Buildings need new roofs, properly patched holes in exterior cladding and paint. So yes, the town will have to continue to put money into the Union Church if they are to maintain hold on it. The fact that this disrepair has been allowed to occur to this extent is inexcusable to me. Had maintenance been performed at appropriate intervals, the building would not be in a position it is now, and community members would not have to step in once again to save a building that was entrusted to the town's stewardship. I know many of the select board members are new to the board, so mentioning past trends may distance the current members, but many opinions shared recently seem no different from the indifferent mindsets that allowed historical rot. These historic buildings serve a community that has a long memory and connections with the former and present stores, shops, schools, and churches. In particular, inclusion to the National Registers, such as the Union Church, recognizes a building as, and I quote, part of the historical and cultural heritage of our nation and should be preserved as a living part of our community life and development. When asked what the Union Church's purpose is, first and foremost, it is that. And re-asking the question, what use is the building to the town, implies that this preservation is of no interest to the town itself and discredits the history that often is only touted seemingly when convenient for connecting with community members or demonstration of responsible public office. That's all I got.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Okay. All right, we'll
Can I
move
ask you a
to
question, Joe?
Yeah, Helen?
I'm not sure what Mr. Talbot's, plan is in being here, but when we get to the solid waste committee part, if we had a question about subdivision ordinance related to solid waste, would it be appropriate for him to be able to answer a question then?
If we need him to, we'll call on him,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
So I'll, Calvin or Chief, Road Commissioner or the Fire Chief, I'll let you guys flip a coin. Come on up. Been busy lately, Calvin.
Oh, yeah. I assume you guys all have the report. So we finished ditching Quaker Meeting House Road between 125 and Meadow Road. A lot of traffic. I think a lot of people are going that way instead of going 125. And of course, the added traffic from the Swamp Road being closed. That was a lot of fun. We've finished rebuilding all the town picnic tables. We've added a handicap table that we built, overhangs, the top overhangs the frame by 3 feet on one end so the wheelchairs can get into the end of the table. We put that at River Park. I met with MMA Risk Management Services Department to visit all the town properties. Other than the Union Church, we had a few minor things that we would need to address, and I'm gonna get those in the works. They're gonna send a written report, action items to Jerry. They want things like vegetation cut over near the little building at the, at River Park. One of the posts on the gazebo is rotted gonna get that replaced, at the War Memorial Park, some bent trim at the salt shed, and some just minor housekeeping things that we need to get done. They basically said to me that the Union Church, after looking at the back walls and paint and obvious issues with the back of the building, that they're gonna likely recommend an engineer, and I don't know how that all works, but I'm sure they'll come in a report, whether they have the authority to mandate that, or as our insurance company, or whether it will just be a recommendation, I'm not sure, but I assume that that's in the works with them. I do know that they didn't like the idea that the chimney wasn't lined and someone had used the stove. I said, no, nobody's used that stove in years. He said, you don't think so? And you open the door up and there's stuff in there that's been burned, and there's remnants of the letters and stuff. Then we went up to the second floor and looked at the backside of the chimney, and there's tin foil in there, and he said, pull that out. I pulled it out, took pictures of it, and you could see where it was on fire. And there's no liner, it's just bricks in there. So I'm sure they're gonna say they want that stove, what she pretty much did tell me, they want that stove, they want that chimney disabled and disconnected from the stove at the very least, so. We will get that to, I don't know, when that report comes in, it'll get distributed to the committees, boards.
Jared, I'm sorry, Calvin, can you just pull the mic closer? My fan base says they can't hear you out there.
Okay. I've met with the transportation director for RSU 5 regarding the bus routes with all the projects and construction we've got around town about how they're gonna get across Swamp Road and reroute the buses so that we can accommodate that. So we've got that all in the works. Ripley and Fletcher delivered our 550. It's sitting out there on the other side of the parking lot if anybody wants to see it. It's all lettered and painted. I'm just trying to get a bill out of them, and that's not as easy as getting a truck. They don't mind giving us a truck, but a bill, I've been working on getting that now for some time, so I should have that by the next meeting, and Jerry will bring a request for a check, I'm sure. The road centerline striping is scheduled for the 19th of September. We are looking at about 21 miles of road this year, which, you know, when I started here 8-9 years ago, there wasn't any paint anywhere in town, and people were always complaining about traveling at night, not being able to see. And so I think it's really made the roads a lot safer at night. It has reflective material in the paint so that it reflects at night. Swamp Road stream crossing is way ahead of schedule. We actually finished the deck and put the gravel over it today. So pretty much we're waiting for paving that's scheduled for the 30th of so next week, paving. And if we can get that done, the engineer is telling us that we probably could open it without the guardrail being in yet if we put barrels down both sides. Leave proper signage up. So we're gonna look at that, see, because other than that, that's not scheduled until September 5th, I believe, for the guardrail, so. But it's still a month ahead of schedule, so that's good news.
Great.
Today, I said we will be, that's when I wrote this, but today we did ditching on 125 and Soper Road. We had to change a culvert at the end and ditch down around the corner to get to the cross culvert on 125, and flagging both of those roads, working right at the intersection, was gonna pose a problem. We didn't have the manpower to do it, so DOT sent a bunch of flaggers over. They took care of 125. We shared radios with them so our crew could talk with theirs, and it worked beautifully today, so we're just gonna go back and do a little bit of erosion control by hand, so that went well. And that's all I got.
Great, thank you, Calvin. Any questions, Calvin? Heather?
Calvin, I just wanted to put it on your radar that if, in case it fell off, because I know that you've been really busy, about the warning lights at Dead Man's Curve.
I did look at those, and I do know that when you come out of Swamp Road, you cannot see. The light is working, because I stood there and I moved over to one side, and I'm thinking it was never intended to be seen. I'm waiting for a call back from one of the DOT people. I'm thinking that when you're sitting on Swamp Road and you come out, you can clearly see the entire hill. So I'm thinking that they didn't think you needed to see. I can tell whether to go or not when I'm sitting at Swamp Road pulling out. I can see perfectly fine looking to the right, and I can see perfectly fine looking. So I'm thinking the fact that it's not flashing when you're sitting at Swamp Road probably is no surprise to them. So I think even Jerry said he pulls out there, and you can clearly see the top of the hill from. It's more or less when you're coming up Route 9, and I have yet to find that not working other than that one time when you come up Route 9 from the bridge from Lisbon. That's flashing to tell me something's coming from the right. I know I've been told it hasn't worked a couple of times, and that one time I did go check it, it was because we just went too long without any sun, and so.
No, I know they had been out, I think more what I was asking about was, you had mentioned maybe getting power
Yeah.
to the sensor versus the solar panel.
Yeah, and it's still on my,
Okay,
still in my pile.
Okay,
Things
thank
to
you.
do, so. Okay.
All right, Calvin, thank you.
thank you so much.
Chief?
Kelvin had 2 pages, I'll keep mine to 1. I think he's trying to outdo me some nights. Yeah, my agenda will table, I believe, that first sentence to later. We're already planning a school visit and an open house at the fire station to coincide with Fire Prevention Week coming up in October, 9th through the 13th. Your crews, your fire crews conducted regional training recently this month with New Gloucester and Lisbon Fire. Several members, 6 members, traveled to New Gloucester on a Sunday morning to participate in a tanker shuttle water delivery drill. I also went over. Several members participated this past Sunday in a swift water rescue class that was held in conjunction with Lisbon Fire. So we went into the river, got wet with them. Both boats were in the river, and we were taught by a national instructor that happens to be on one of the departments for swift water. Every year, both departments are averaging 2 rescues out of that river there. Last year, of course, just downriver in Topsom, they had a fatality. So it's used. I've already been on one rescue this year, so it's a target hazard for us. We take that area seriously, and when we get called, we call Lisbon and vice versa, just for the staffing and the extra equipment. We also recently, for our EMS night medical, Durham, we were joined across the street with Lisbon EMS, Sabatis, I think Green was there to train on the latest Narcan, also called naloxone, overdose data, and that was provided by Maine EMS. So we had a Maine EMS representative come in and train all 3-4 departments about the latest data. As you know, we have had fatality overdoses in Durham, and we're just keeping statistically up on best practices for the opioid crisis. Some of you may have seen on Facebook or social media that our fire crews went over to Freeport these past 2 Saturdays. They've had 2 fires over there on Saturdays, and we sent crews, including myself, on both of them. One was at 4 a.m. in South Freeport, and then most recently on the other side. Poor gentleman lost everything, but we provide crews to the scene, so. Also, the chief participated in a walkthrough recently with the planning committee of the leisure center with the planning board. That was eye-opening for me. I hadn't been in there. So I appreciate the chair, John Talbot's invite and working well with other committee members. So just know, you know, on these planned expansions or housing developments that we're getting in there early with our concerns. And finally, I remind everyone in the room and at home, Sunday, September 3rd at 1 o'clock, your fire department color guard will be posting the colors at the Portland Sea Dogs game, and all townspeople are invited. I expect everyone to wear a Durham shirt. Everyone in the room's invited. I'm not paying for tickets and beer, but we'll find somebody. But it is a big night for the color guard to post colors at the game, so we're proud of those guys.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Do you know if they've like designated a section for like Durham residents to sit together, or is it just a free-for-all and we're all gonna just?
It is,
Okay.
it is a free-for-all. I know you can get like a box of 10 tickets type of thing. I think that's in the outfield. Tickets were provided for the color guard. They're bringing families. It's sort of a family fun day for the fire department and to show our appreciation of the color guard.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Super.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, next on the agenda, old business. We have presentation by the code enforcement officer on signs. Alan, good evening.
Hello, Alan Plummer, Code Enforcement Officer. Last time I was at the Select Board, you asked me to get the opinion of the town's attorney on the sign ordinance, which I did. You have the report from him. Pretty much he concurred with Maine Municipal Association and he did more specific details. So there are no signs allowed in Durham off premises. So that is what he determined. So I will be getting in touch with the people that I have on my list that have put signs out. There are some signs that are allowed. So a temporary sign is allowed through the Maine state sign law. And what that means is it has a specific date involved. For example, and he put it in his letter, Replanova Farm had a sign out that had an event, a specific event. So they're kind of within the ordinance. So what I'm gonna do with those people is, I'm gonna tell them, you can put those signs out for the event, I just need the date you put it out and the person that puts the sign out on the sign itself. So if you have that contact information on it, you can have temporary signs off premises. Another example of that is the Durham Consolidated School had some kind of fair going on. It was a specific date and they put signs around. Again, if they put the date that they put it out and a contact person, those are allowed. The signs that are not allowed, for example, the sign for Old Crow Ranch Meat Market is not allowed. They are allowed to have a sign, but it has to be the DOT sign. So I'll get in touch with them about that as well. The signs that aren't allowed, the signs that have all kinds of people that are doing work in town, they put them on the street corners around at every intersection, roofing signs, tree removal, that kind of stuff. Those aren't temporary, those aren't allowed through our ordinance. I suggest if people don't like the way the ordinance works, work on changing that. Because if you don't like the way the ordinance is, change it, because I'm gonna follow the ordinance as best I can, the way the ordinance says. So, just a reminder, this is just one of our ordinances that's a little bit confusing. So even when we were sitting in the select board meeting last time, there were 5 of you, and I don't think any of you agreed on what the sign ordinance said. That's only 5 people. So that's unfortunate, yes.
I have one further question. Just everything that I read through, it related to the public way, and so my question would then be, if someone is allowing a sign on their property that's not in the public way. That's my only unanswered question after reading this, and thank you for following up with him.
Sure. So out of the public way is a very big area if you're talking about the state roads. So there's a determination, there's a map that delineates where the right-of-way is. So 50 feet off the center line is a long ways. I probably won't even see signs that are in there because I don't pay that much attention unless I need to pay attention to a specific property. So if it's off premise, the intent of this is to be restrictive so there aren't signs all over Durham.
Right.
So I probably am not gonna see signs that are out of the right of way. So I guess I don't have an answer. It's their private property at that point, and they can put things up.
Okay.
There
I
are,
just know that one of the people that has that sign that's referred to in this, they have expressed publicly that they are willing to have a sign, even it's off premises for a business on their property. And that just feels like a really gray area that I wanted to make sure that we were looking at.
Well, this is America, and that talks about the right of way. You can do what you want on your property.
Okay.
so.
that
There are
answers-
limits.
That answers my question.
There are limits in the law, though. Actually, there's a size limit for the size sign you can put on your private property. Who thought? Yes.
Yeah, so I just had a couple clarifying questions. So if someone has a yard sale, and they have a date, this Saturday, 9 to 5, that's okay on like the corners at stuff
Yard
like
sales
that?
are exempt anyway. You
Okay.
can have a yard sale sign up
Yeah,
for 7 days.
okay. And then I'm thinking about like contractors who are doing work on someone's house, they wanna put a sign out front that says so-and-so builders. You're saying that if it's a main road, that has to be 50 feet off the center line? And my question for that is, I know like Rich had brought up, like, sometimes those signs are for the delivery companies to know where to
Yep, I
bring the
understand that.
material.
And I'll work with that. So right
So I wasn't sure
now,
if that fell under temporary, because if I'm actively doing construction and I have a sign saying, Joe Smith Roofing,
so the solution to that is talk to the addressing officer for the town. I'm the addressing officer. I can get you an address. You can put a post out in front with a number on it. So
Yeah.
that clarifies. And I can do that when construction starts.
okay.
If you need an address, I can get that for you, and you can put your post out immediately.
So then my follow-up question for that is like, after someone's had some work done, like there are folks who just leave the contractor sign up for free advertising. But technically, if it's within 50 feet of the center line, now it's problematic.
So I'm not gonna be jumping on all these signs tomorrow.
Mhm.
Although I've bumped into people and said, well, if you don't wanna get a violation notice, you should take it out before Wednesday, because I'm gonna talk to the select board, and then I'm gonna start enforcing these. So I have other things to do. These are things that I see when I'm driving along. The ordinance says they're not allowed. If someone has it there for a couple weeks, see it for a couple weeks, that's fine. If it's up there for 3 or 4 weeks and I notice, there's one that's down by the Get and Go. They probably had a roof done 3 months ago, but that's something I'd say, hey, you can't really have that sign up there for that long.
And my last question, I'm assuming real estate signs, for sale
Yeah,
signs
that's
are exempt.
That's on their property,
But
so
if
they're
it's
not off
within-
premises.
So that's where I'm confused about if it's within 50 feet of the center line of the main road.
It's their property.
Okay.
This is all referring to off premises sign. So if
Okay.
it's a business, you can't have a sign at the corner, because it's not your business.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
if it's a business, this sign thing started because someone wanted to sell birdhouses,
Mhm.
and they asked about signs, and I said, let me look into that. So birdhouses is not a big business. If you're selling birdhouses on the weekend, you sell birdhouses. Can I have a sign at the end of my driveway? Absolutely. Yes.
But I can't put a sign saying Heather's selling birdhouse.
Don't have signs all over town saying birdhouses this way, 'cause it's off premise.
Competitive birdhouse market.
Right.
That's all I have questions.
What's that?
Anybody else? Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, Historic District Commission.
So I asked for this to be on the agenda, so we had a meeting last week with, the chairperson, Ms. Kilby Chesley, and I thought there was a good conversation. Later in the week, I believe it was that Friday or so, we got an email, where she said if we wanted her to do the grant writing, she would charge $150 or 10% of the grant. And, I was frustrated with the tone of the email, the attitude in the email. I thought it was somewhat inappropriate, but I also wanted to draw the attention, of this board received that email, and the paperwork that she provided us at that meeting last week. In, section 12.6, maintenance, towards the end of that section, it talks about the commission shall work with public and private parties to assist any owner in finding the resources necessary to prevent such state of disrepair. And when we had the conversation about the grant writing, that was the reference, and that's what we were talking about. And so I wanted to make it clear that that was the conversation, that nobody on this board expected, more than what that calls, and that is the commission working with public and private parties to assist the owner. It was a comment I made because I know that the chairperson is writing grants for another property, and so that was a comment. And I wanted to bring that up because that email, I'll just say I wasn't a fan of it, and leave it at that. I didn't think it was appropriate.
Yeah, and I'll follow up. I was not very pleased with the email exchange either that went along, that came after that. It was disappointing because I do feel as though the commission's job and what we've set the commission out to go do is to actually perform that grant writing and look for those opportunities to help sustain the property that's under their respective control, and bring us those opportunities in if there are grants available. If we need to go out and get grants written, we'll go out and do that through the town manager. It did set a bad, again, I wasn't very happy with the tone either. But you know, as far as the commission's concerned, we need you guys to keep going, and keep coming up with ideas to preserve the properties and to use the properties. When we keep saying the same thing, it's why we have another commission assembled to go look at uses and what we need to do for that Union Church. So, you know, the idea that we don't care about the church, I think I might have heard that earlier, that we do care about the church. We want to do something that makes the church available to all, and usable by all. And that's the main goal here. And you know, money's tight for everybody. So we need to be fiscally responsible when spending the town's money on any building in town, not just the church. We get called to the carpet continuously on public buildings. So eventually, the townspeople will, if we keep the Union Church and go keep and maintain it as everybody would like, that is gonna be a hefty bill. So it's not taken lightly by the board at all. So any insinuation that we don't care about the historic properties, that I don't believe is absolutely true. I think that the town has been very fiscally frugal over the years where money hasn't been allocated to these historic structures. I get it. Everybody has to repair their stuff along the way, and you have to prioritize what that is. And sometimes it means getting an ambulance before fixing up an older building. It's that simple of a calculation in many people's minds. And I think that's where part of the problem is. And if we want to go and fix all these buildings up, I'm fine with it. We will put that in front of the townspeople to go and vote on that. But we're gonna go do it in a logical process that's laid out in front of us. And we're gonna take one thing at a time and tick it off the list. All these projects, including these older buildings. I think they are important. I think everything's important inside them. I've been in the building. It's a beautiful building. And I think it can be used in the future. But we just need to step through it very carefully, the whole process. Heather?
I'd just like to say a couple of things on this. First, I recognize the frustration of the people that are on the Historic Commission and some of the other boards or committees in town, because we do have a lot of documentation that they have come before the board for a number of years. And I think that part of the tone of this email is out of frustration of having come before boards that were not made up of the people sitting here. And, you know, we are not responsible for the decisions that were made 20 years ago. I think that we are taking an active stance by creating the commission that, or the, what's the name of the new one?
Union Church Committee.
Thank you. You know, to try to arrive in, like, reiterating what Joe was saying, in a systematic, logical manner of what we are going to put out to the townspeople. I know that you attempted last year to go through the process to be able to get the question in front of the voters, and it didn't pan out the way that, the process didn't work correctly last year. And I know that you sat before us and you were asking for specific direction. And I think that the tone of this email, while I agree, I was very surprised when I read it, because that, to arrive at this email based off of what our conversation was, that was a big leap for me to even get to this based off that conversation. But I recognize that you were here asking for specific direction, and I do hear the frustration coming out of these committees. And so I would just like to be the devil's advocate and say that there is a presence here that is trying to work the process properly so that it does go in front of the voters and the voters can decide.
Anything else from the church?
Do I get a chance to respond? I've just been raked over the coals. Do I get a chance to respond?
I'm actually not really up for having a big debate over this tonight.
It's no debate.
All right? You know, yeah, members?
I think that we asked to have the Historic Commission on the agenda, and I feel like allowing a response is appropriate, but that's my opinion, and I'm just one person, so I welcome what other people feel.
I agree. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, go ahead, Lois.
The conversation that I came to speak to you about from the commission had nothing to do with grant writing. The grant writing is a separate issue that I do in my retirement, and has nothing to do with the commission. Josh's point that in 12.6, it says the commission will help public and private landowners find help in repairing their buildings, has nothing to do with my grant writing. I would not write a grant for Ms. DeSipkis back here, who lives in the district. I would not write a grant for her. I would not write a grant for Linda and Jan Litchfield. Nor will I write a grant for the Union Church, unless, and it's not 10%, it's 8%, and it's not $150 an hour, it's $175, unless it's in a contract that we have, that I will write a contract, that I will do a grant for the town. That's a private industry that I have. It's a private business that I do. And have I raised $100,000 or more? Absolutely, much more. But I do it because I have contracts, or in the case of the West Durham Methodist Church, which is the other one in town that I do grants for, because I choose to do that for nothing. I don't believe that the town can tell me that I have to write a grant.
Well, nobody was telling you.
Excuse me.
that.
I listened politely.
But
This is a board meeting, so.
Let's
yeah,
stay with what the commission needs to do. The commission has a responsibility under 12.6. Excuse me, what?
I don't think
No.
raising voices
No.
is helpful.
Yeah.
That's my regular tone, my regular voice.
Just saying.
Under 12.6, the commission has the responsibility to bring to the codes officer a building in the district that's in disrepair that needs to be fixed. And the owner is given the opportunity to fix it. If they ask for help, the commission will give them help. That's what the ordinance says. Who is the owner of the Union Church? Not the commission. So when the time comes and we follow the ordinance, the way the ordinance is written, we would be sending the town a notice of violation because the building is in disrepair. If we want to follow that ordinance, I'm sure that the commission will go right ahead, but we're trying to do this outside of sending the town a violation notice and going through the codes officer and asking the codes officer to tell the select board that the building is no longer within code. We can do it that way. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think the problem here is the way the optics came out, because we were talking about the building and then we get an email about the services. So it's no different than a contractor being on the board here and saying, well, let's go do it this way, and oh, by the way, I can go do that for you for $10,000. That's how it came across. It came across as an opportunist type thing, and that was what rubbed me the wrong way. So yeah, if you had it, again, it's the optics of how that all transpired, that what we're having a problem with. So I get the ordinances, but it left a bad taste in my mouth. That
Well,
simple.
I'll just take it a step further, because several people reached out to me after they watched last time, and they had watched the baseball interaction with the gentleman, and then they watched the interaction that we had. And guess what word came up? Misogynists. And I, rather than take that as the point of our discussion, decided to take it to the fact that someone was trying to use humor by asking me if I would do first a grant, then 5 grants, then 10 grants, then someone said, it's only cut and paste. And then someone said, oh, all you have to do is press Control-C, Control-V, and it's done. That isn't how grant writing works. And for anyone that's ever written a grant, they know that. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Lois. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Let's move on to the Union Church report. Update, please.
So, yeah, what do they have in front of them, Jeremy?
Big stack of paper.
They have your report, so.
Yeah, we have the report.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just so the board's made aware, you hired a fire chief that's certified, credentialed, and experienced in inspections and also with occupancies on the registry. So coming from Duxbury, Mass, founded by the Pilgrims 200 years before the Union Church, I'm quite experienced, over 25 years of inspecting these occupancies. I was tasked by the town manager, by you all, to do a life safety code inspection of the Union Church. I decided to call in the fire marshal just out of respect, out of transparency, out of not having a dog in the fight. I didn't need him, and I also let Lois know the time that the marshal was gonna be there, just out of respect for the commission. I'm certainly not up on divisions of commissions and Union Church and whatnot, but anyways, you all tasked me with an inspection. I do these frequently around town, so town buildings, AMVets, that type of thing. You have in front of you my inspection form. This is a common form. This is what I'm looking at right here. A common form that I use. It sort of gives you hints. So I'll just go right down through it. You know, I found the fire alarm system with no inspection history. Every year it should be tested, certified. There's 2 smoke detector heads in there. I think they're tied also to the burglar system. I didn't take those down, but they have to be within 10 years new in order to be. But that takes a third-party alarm system, not the fire chief, to go in there, test it, inspect it, take it down, and give us a report on that. And that's annually. I checked all my files at the fire department, because we do inspections. I couldn't find any history of that. So it needs a current inspection. There's no address numbers on the building at all. I believe the official address, 744 Roseboro, so it would need a 744 placed on there. The extinguishers, there's 2 of them. They are up to date, but they need markings, signage that says, you know, extinguisher here. They are in the correct locations. One of them is hidden by the door, so if you go in there, there's double doors that open up, and it does sort of obscure where the fire extinguishers are. They may have to be moved. I found storage within 2 feet of the ceiling. That's against code, so a lot of closets upstairs. It has to be 2 feet free from the ceiling level, any storage. And there's a lot of storage up there that needs to be moved. I found excess of waste storage on the 2nd floor, very hard to maneuver up there. That's the common inspection that I found. The marshal representative did have a discussion with Lois at the time. That building has had several uses, if you look back in time. So it started as a church, that's an assembly use, that's out of the life safety code, NFPA 101, and then it changed in the 20s to the town hall, right, until the 80s. So a town hall like this building is a business occupancy. They're held to a different standard, just like a restaurant's held to a different standard. And now the Union Church is really being used again as an assembly. Meetings, gatherings, I saw the word museum used, but the marshal, along with me, did conclude that it's an assembly use occupancy. And that means something. That means you have to look up assembly use requirements. So the first email that you saw from the marshal, and again, so everyone's on the same page, I was tasked by the town manager, my boss, and sent him this information privately, knowing that he would send it to you. That's only where this went. So on record, the first email from the state fire marshal, after completing an inspection at the above-mentioned address, it has been determined that the Historical Society plans to use this building as an assembly. And then I believe they were made aware of a possible gathering next month in the works, and they did request, the marshal requested a license be obtained if that was gonna transpire. Within a short amount of days, the marshal went to her boss, and another email came to me that says, and again, the marshal works for me, and then I pass it on to Jerry, but the church being used as an assembly will have to obtain a construction permit through our plans review division. Here is the link for the online application. She alluded to the need of a second means of egress from that building. So currently, there's only a double door entrance with the occupancy, and that occupancy is based on square footage of the floor divided by 15 square foot per person. Because of the assembly occupancy, they would exceed 50 people in there. It's an assembly use. So they want a second means of egress built in before any gatherings or use of that building. I'm working with Alan, the codes, and Jerry. So before any gatherings or anything else, you need a second means of egress built into that church or building right now. not including all the other stuff that I found.
Question
Yes.
on that, only because we do this at our facility. What about posting a fire watch for the assembly?
I didn't ask that. There's more, I think, concerns. As the health agent, there's no running water, there's no bathroom facilities. If you're having a gathering or children, there's no porta potties, there's no, hand washing. It's not currently usable for gatherings.
Does that include meetings or just larger gatherings?
That's up for you all to determine sort of your tolerance of the use of the town building. I believe the marshal's words were, 3 to 5 is a meeting, and anything after that is an assembly. Again, working with codes and Alan, this is just from the marshal. Did I miss anything, Jerry, on?
No.
Are there any exemptions that exist because it's a historical building?
There is not an exemption that I'm aware of for assemblies. That is almost aesthetics. So I know if you were to put a second means of egress, it would have to match the clapboards and, you almost have to bring it up to ADA compliant, American Disabilities Act.
That's,
I was gonna only say, from an ADA perspective,
Yeah,
typically historical buildings are, I rent a ADA building.
Okay.
And you're not typically held to an
ADA compliant.
compliance.
However, I'll have to get with Alan, again, as the fire chief, inspections, construction's a little out. Off the top of my head, as I think we've learned tonight, words matter. Sentences, definitions, everything matters. So I've been studying this. So you're talking NFPA, fire code, NFPA 1 is that thick as it relates to this building. The life safety code is just as thick. I remind the board that the fire chief is the authority having jurisdiction in this building for inspections and use and occupancy. Yes, sir.
Well, that rationale, earlier, the statement was made, like, what classifies how many people can be there and for things of that nature. Typically, the fire marshal states that occupancy requirement.
Under the code.
Under the code.
Under the code. So as an example,
I only bring that up, Chief,
Sure.
because you kind of reflected it back to us, like that would be up to you guys' interpretation, but it's really your interpretation of what can be allowed to go on in there. Am I wrong on that?
as a team effort, no, you're not wrong in it.
Okay.
It's my opinion, with being the authority having jurisdiction, you can't, if you give an inch, you take a mile. You can't say, I only want 3. Usually occupancies have a occupancy number on them, like a plate that says, I'll get right to your head.
Yep.
So you can't say, I just want 3 to 5, because there's no oversight of somebody at like a nightclub going, all right, now you're at 7. So it's very difficult. It is an assembly, and they do it just as history. There's like 5 types of assembly, really, 4 or 5 types in the code. And it goes by, is it fixed seating? Is it movable seating? Is it chairs? That type of stuff. So there is some movable parts in that building currently. Pews, chairs, museum quality pieces, display cases, that type of thing. Again, all concurred by the marshal, yes.
So my question is, when the marshal referred to 3 to 5 as a meeting and not an assembly, if there were members however it worked, whatever the rules or the parameters were, right, that wanted to address some of these things that are in violation, like the excess storage or the storage that's within 2 feet. My question is, how would it be determined, because you're saying there's no oversight, that those things can be rectified?
Sure.
If we're in a situation where we're not allowing people in the building?
This is one step in this process. I believe the next step before I can give you an answer on that is an engineering inspection of the building. Again, words matter. They certainly matter to me. So unsafe, rot, falling down, these are all words that I've just heard through discussions. I believe the town manager is working on an engineer. It'll be in his report. So before I can give you that, Heather, I would again want an engineer. And before we allow people in, I mean, is it structurally stable? That's not my purview. I can't tell you that. And you're talking snow loads, you're talking, look, the building worries me for the fact that it's right on, the entrance is right on the road. If anything were to happen as somebody's pulling in or out because of the sight lines are difficult, if car smashed into those front steps, you can't get out. Those windows are really not meant to be, or the side windows, as exits. I'm sure they don't open. All discussions with
That's
the
all
marshal.
valid. That's all
Discussion that I
valid.
had with the marshal. Yes, Joe?
It's funny you brought up windows. I was gonna ask, in terms of second mode of egress, like I manage a building that when we had to do second mode of egress, it just had to do with window size to a room. So are there options like that, especially when it's a historic building, you don't wanna change the nature, or is it just like the only option is adding in a door
There-
and then trying to make it match? 'Cause I
There
know that
may be-
people may wanna preserve
Sure.
really historic things, so if it's just a bigger window or a different kind of window, or an
There-
escape window, you know.
There may be, and I would certainly bring the marshal in on it, and Alan needs to weigh in on it, and more research needs to be done on all that.
Yeah, cause I know like in my example, we just had to increase the size of the window and make sure that it was opened large enough for someone to move out of
Exit,
it
sure.
in an emergency rather than another door, so. I wasn't sure. Thanks.
It's a multi-step, I don't have a time frame. A multi-step process.
When we get to your report, are
Yeah,
you
I'm
gonna
done.
update?
Yeah,
Oh,
well, I'm
okay.
gonna update right,
Okay, okay,
coming right up as soon as
okay.
Chief's done.
Yeah. Yeah, this-
And then after he gives us the update, if we wanted to talk to Chief again, after we hear that,
Yeah,
is
Chief
that
can stay right
appropriate?
there. I can tell you where we're
Okay.
at for that if
Okay.
you want.
Yeah, if you wanna just.
Yeah.
keep
Okay,
going.
so as far as the structural engineering goes, I've talked to 2 different firms. One was Criterion, I talked to Corey Riggs. They gave an estimate of a hard $2,200 to go in there and do the inspection. And I talked to a gentleman by the name of Eric Doobie out of Trillium Engineering. They said they can go in there between 1,000 and 2,000, they buy the hour. Trillium or Eric Doobie was recommended by the fire marshal, that the chief forwarded to me. After talking to both of them, I had Trillium, Eric Doobie on schedule to go in there. They're 4 to 6 weeks out between the time they look at it, and the same thing with Trillium, both of them. They weren't gonna drop what they're doing to do what we're doing, so they're 4 to 6 weeks out between the time they look at that and get the report to us. So that's where we are with that.
How far out before they could get there, if it's 4 to 6 weeks?
It's a
after
couple
the
weeks
visit?
before they're gonna schedule the site visit.
It's like 6 to 8 weeks for.
No, 4 to 6 from that time, so,
Oh, okay. 2 weeks till they get there and then
yeah,
4 to 6, so, yeah.
then maybe another 2 to 4 to get the report. It's like 4 to 6 weeks from right now to get that. And I also, in the meantime in all this, I applied for a grant at MMA to help pay for that. It's a risk reduction grant. I submitted it. Hopefully, won't get a bill before they admit the grant, because if they do, the grant's gonna be no good. So October 1st is the deadline for the grant, we should hear. So
I put the grant in for $2,200, because that was the hard number, so we'll wait to see what they, see if we get the grant to help pay, like I said, or to pay for it. I didn't want to stick to taxpayers with it, so I figured do that, so.
Okay. Heather?
Thank you for following up immediately after our last meeting. I know that we all recognize that there was some time sensitivity attached to it, so thank you. To circle back now to what we were saying, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. You're not comfortable with people being there until the engineer goes out, even if it's a small number of people to address some of these things? You want to wait? And that, okay.
True
Thank you.
statement, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood your position correctly. Thank you.
I just, for the chief and what he does, I think it just boils down to liability. If someone in there gets hurt and he's done the report, who's really liable? It's the town. That's liable for that. So-
Right, no, as the
No, I just
professional,
wanna-
that's why I'm asking
yeah.
him that question. I appreciate his professional opinion in that instance. I'm not trying to put you in the hot seat. I actually value your opinion tremendously,
I-
and
I
that's why I'm
appreciate-
asking you for it.
I appreciate that. For those that don't know, the fire chief's job is very rarely putting out fires. It, so to speak. It's literally protecting the town from liability in all things that have to do with human resources, OSHA, Bureau standard, labor standards, all of it. And in this case, a full inspection has been done of a town-owned building. There are deficiencies that need to be corrected. We are still waiting, your choice about an engineer, structural engineer. So I would bar access until you have all those questions because of liability. Again, as the town manager says, if the alarm system's not up to standard or code or hasn't been inspected, we now know that. There's no reason people should be in there.
No, I agree.
That's what I was tasked for. And again, it's specific by code and standards.
Okay.
One more question,
Yep.
because I know that these people want to know the answer to this. They have an event planned. I know that we can't have the event. I'm hearing that very clearly. Is there any pathway that they can get their items out of there to be able to host their event in a different building, but have those things available to them?
That's one option. I think, probably not tonight, but a discussion, it'd be my opinion now, a discussion with the town manager, who runs the day-to-day, the fire chief, the codes. We can possibly come up with certainly ideas, aspects, something to help.
Thank you.
Anything?
I'd ask if we can go into an executive session to discuss the Union Church building under Title I MRSA Section 405, 6C. Thank you, I couldn't remember the subsection.
I have a second? Joe seconds. Any discussion?
I don't know if you can go into an executive
In the
session
middle
on a
of
public
this.
building.
Well,
Yes,
you
you
can.
can, but there, what would be
You
the
can.
reason what would be prohibited from the public?
What is 6C? What does it say?
It's real estate, isn't it?
It allows us to discuss real estate and the condition of buildings in an executive session.
Okay.
Do we do that now, or do we do it at the end?
You can call for it now.
Call for it now? Yep.
Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm just asking. I
Yep,
didn't
well,
know.
that's fine, yep. All right, any other discussion? Then, I have a second. All in favor? Okay, motion carries.
John, is that something you need me in the room for, or?
No.
Okay.
Can you stay though? Can you stay? Not in the room, but.
Yeah, I was planning on
Okay,
staying.
thank you.
Just gotta keep Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep Jerry. Yep, go ahead, yep. Jess has to take us offline.
Yes, thank you, Jess.
Zachary do more.
Just wait for Jess to give us the word.
Well, she stays, takes minutes.
Yeah, it takes, it's still, it clicked in, but it's delayed.
We should have done that one.
Where's that one called personnel?
Jess, are we back on? I'm sorry.
I'm looking.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see how long this goes. This takes an hour.
Well, and I am proposing that we actually, so we can,
Well, I mean, if you push it today, if it's on today, it should really be pushed to the next. That we can close it prior to the.
no, I am, I'm saying next week. I'm not saying next week. But it's that rude because he's here to push this?
This guy, solid waste.
No, no, please.
No, he would.
Oh, oh,
Depending on how long he goes, some of this.
oh, I see.
Back on? Okay, select board's back in session, regular session, out of executive session. Okay, so I think the only thing that we don't even have to vote on, but just to follow up on the Union Church report, that building's to be closed until further notice, Jerry.
Okay.
And we're, awaiting the structural analysis. At this point, nobody in and out, but we'll, into the Union Church. Except yourself and the chief as needed.
Yep.
What's that? And then there was no action out of the executive session otherwise, so.
Okay.
So, just so everybody knows, that no entry into that Union Church until further notice. Just wanna be crystal clear about that. If there's anybody's personal stuff in there, then please talk to the town manager. But as far as any of the other contents in there, when I mean personal stuff, if somebody forgot their cell phone or pocketbook or wallet in there while they were working, that would be the only thing I would consider personal at this point. Otherwise, there's no entry into the building until further notice.
Are we able to comment?
No. Sorry. Okay? We're gonna move on to new business. We got a codification discussion.
Application, yeah. Zach, come on in.
Zach?
So I wanted to bring Zach in to talk about ordinance codification. As you know, ordinances are old, there's been a lot of copying and pasting going on. So, just to kind of give you a heads up, I'm more than likely going to be putting in a capital request to do this and run it through the process. But I wanted you folks to get an idea of what codification is, how it works, how many towns have done it, and bring Zach in to discuss that too. So you know more what that involves. It's not about writing new ordinances or anything like that. It's about getting our existing ordinances lined up with state law. And there's been some changes in this town. I mean, you've got a town manager now under the town management plan under Title 30A. None of your ordinances references that anymore. But we gotta follow that law. So it's updating in those types of things. So, thank you, Zach, for coming in.
My pleasure. Would you like me to just start, or
Yeah.
Very
Go
good.
ahead. Yep.
So, my name is Zachary Dumont. I work for a company called General Code. We're a division of the International Code Council. They do the International Building Code, Fire Code, Mechanical, all that. General Code focuses with local municipalities to codify their existing legislation, provide recommendations on how to bring them in line with current state statutes and eliminate any conflicts. Sometimes it might be as simple as you pass some ordinances in the late 50s where you refer to dog catchers, but now we call them animal control officers. You might want to update that language so it's clear across the board. Other times we might find stuff where what you have on the book is a little bit out of date with new state standards. You might be able to go more stricter or more looser with new state policies. So we say, hey, this is what's out there. It's up to you how you want to do it. But the idea is we take everything that's outstanding, everything that's ever been passed at town meeting and is currently being enforced, we compile it, organize it, give it a logical flow that's easy to parse and understand. So essentially, all of your building ordinances, we go into a buildings chapter. Every animal ordinance, we go into an animals chapter. By the time we're all said and done, we build you a municipal code book. It's a book of laws. It flows very nicely from A to Z. And theoretically, everything in there will have been up to date because it's been reviewed and analyzed by our experts. General Code has 3 editors that work primarily in the state of Maine. We have currently 31 codes available online that are publicly accessible. We have a couple communities who are in progress right now. We just started with the town of China and the town of Bucksport. Both of them are about 2 months into an 18-month project. By the time they're done, they'll have something that looks very similar. And right now, I believe there are 3 communities that are outstanding where we're expecting to start before the end of this year. So that's kind of the long and short of it. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Please.
So what it will do is it will go through our ordinance, and then anywhere that we're not in line with state standards, that would get pointed out to us.
Exactly.
And then we're a town meeting format in order to make changes. And so at that point, any changes that would need to be made that are not in alignment, that all has to go before the town meeting format to get voted on to make those changes.
Exactly.
So this is the process of highlighting where those discrepancies are so that we can bring that to the voters.
There are a
to
couple
bring them
ways
in
to do it.
alignment.
Generally, what we find what works best is we build you a draft code. We analyze the draft. So that's everything that you've ever passed that you want included in the code. Then we'll go through, we'll give you a series of questions, typically saying, hey, in chapter 1, section B, we found this. In chapter 181, we found XYZ problem. We'll give you a list of ways to correct that or bring it in line. You make those comments, you make those edits, and then we take a finalized version of that to town meeting. And you say at town meeting, hey, look, this was out of alignment, this was out of alignment. We corrected them, here's all the information. Do you want to adopt the new code, yes or no? Do you want to adopt the code but not this change or that change, etc.? Assuming it passes at town meeting, that's your new code that goes forward. Other communities, they want to see what's out there, but they don't want to make any changes. They just want to get structure together, and then either through the select board or its various committees, they'll work on new legislation over the ensuing years to bring those changes forward to town meeting. So there are a couple of ways to do it, but generally we like to identify the problems so you know what should be addressed.
So, in the example where you said you'd create like a draft, and then you share it with the select board or whatever, and then it's going to a town meeting, does your organization send someone to the town meeting to answer questions and explain, or is it kind of you just hand it off to the select board?
Usually,
I wasn't sure how the process
No, it's okay.
works, so.
Usually, we'll identify a project manager within the town who will oversee communication between General Code's editor and your project manager, and then whomever's gonna handle it on the town side. We'll give you all of the resources, and by the time you're done, you're gonna know how to answer every question that comes up. Occasionally, we'll send folks out, but in most cases, it's not needed because you'll either have like a small working group of people who will be there at town meeting, whether it's a couple people from planning board, a couple of people from select board, town administrator, code officer. There are a couple of different ways to do it. It's whatever works best for the town. But we're gonna give you every single piece of adoptive legislation you would need at town meeting. We're gonna give you explanations and show you what we were working with, what we made it look like, and what we think you should be adopting.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Not very long ago, we redid shoreline zoning,
Mhm.
and that was all done I think at the state level, they had to review all of what our changes would be before we put that out to voters.
Mhm.
And it was determined that it was all in alignment and that we were good to go.
Yeah.
And so we just did that. And then there are other places where, what we have already passed is a little bit stricter
Mhm.
than state law. And so when you're giving us the report back, are we gonna see it in two ways, where this is what the state law is, this is what you voted on that's stricter, but it's still in alignment because we're allowed to do that?
Yeah, generally what I would say is, this is the code, this is what we had a comment on, and sometimes it might be as simple as the state allows you to do up to X, you have done that. If you don't wanna make any changes, mark leave as is, or, hey, we wanna make one edit, please revise as. So we're gonna go through, look at that state level, look at the relevant case law around it, and if we see that you did something that was allowed but might be different than normal, we're gonna highlight it so you can see it, but if you're happy with it, you're happy with it.
Okay.
Our goal is to give you an idea of what's out there, how to improve your ordinances, and make it so that you have a succinct book that one person can go into town and say, I have a question about our dogs chapter. Great, here's the book, read through it, it's all right there.
So, my other question is that, do you also take into consideration our comp plan? Because I think state statute says that any changes that we have to make to our land use ordinance has to align with our comp plan. And so when you're doing that referencing, are you also referencing our comp plan?
We don't codify comprehensive plans, but if you provide it to us for us to read through and go through, we'll definitely take it into consideration. Sometimes towns will have like a bylaw committee or an ordinance committee where they've already started some of this work internally, and they'll give us a list of all of the problems or deficiencies or concerns that they have, and they'll tell us, this is what we'd like to see, can you provide us with X, Y, Z, and these are the documents that we want you to look at. The editor will go through, they'll review them, a lot of communication back and forth. But the idea is to make sure that we hear everything that you have to say, because we're here to help you. That's why we're in the business of doing this.
So really what we're trying to do is just get the ordinances so most people can understand what they say and line up with what it actually says. Take the sign ordinance, for example. It references that you're gonna follow state statute. Well, then it says no signs. Well, those conflict with one another, so we just wanna clean those types of things up. And bringing things to town meeting that follow state statute, yeah, you gotta do it. I would hope that the townspeople wouldn't vote against it, because then they're basically voting against not following the law. So it's really just getting things up to speed with what laws have passed over the years and getting our ordinances to reflect that.
But it's also reorganizing the
Yeah.
reorganizing the
Absolutely.
document.
And finding ambiguities between like if it got changed over here, and it should have gotten changed over here, but it didn't get changed over here, and now it conflicts.
Yeah,
That
Right.
tends to be one of the primary things that you see, because we'll take every question that we have and your digital code manuscript, it's gonna go online. Anybody who works for the town can get a login to look at it, to see all of the work that we've done. So if you have a couple members from select board, a couple members from planning, and maybe conservation commission or whatnot, you have somebody who wants to be involved with the project, everybody can go online, they'll see everything that we've identified, and you'll go, as you go through, you'll see where, let's say Sadie's your editor. I noticed in chapters 2, 3, and 4, you make reference to this law, but that actual law is entitled this way or isn't numbered this way. Do you want to make these changes so it lines up and is corrected? And as we build your code, we'll stick in editor's notes, adoptive histories, and other comments through there, so people can easily navigate through the code and say, oh, okay, this was talked about here. For more information, I gotta look at this chapter to get the rest of it. It is in-depth work, and it's very boring work, that's why I have editors who do it, but at the,
Oh, this is right up my alley, I would love this.
see, this is perfect.
and you know, we have George, but George doesn't have the time to do this kind of in-depth stuff. He's busy doing stuff with the planning board and subdivisions and this, that. This is quite a process that the town would go through if they bite onto it. So, it's out there, it's available. I don't know how many people have copied and pasted into the ordinance stuff, but I know that that's happened. I've heard it.
The other thing that you'll probably find is useful is you'll have a consistent style and format, and then moving forward, you wanna bring a new warrant article to town meeting to make changes. Send us an email to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about sending to town meeting. Is this formatted correctly, or where in the code would we wanna insert this language? Our editors will tell you, hey, put it in this chapter, in this section, and reference the fact that you're amending X, Y, Z. We had that happen in Westboro, Massachusetts, 2-3 weeks ago. Dottie sent me an email, I sent it over to the editor, we sent it back to Dottie. Now they're ready for their special fall town meeting. Easy peasy.
Jerry, would the intent be to ask the town to do this? Acquire the monies?
I
and
will go,
back to the town and ask them to adopt it? Is that what you? or
I'm putting in a capital request to do it,
for
just
next
let,
year?
yep.
And may I ask about, do we have a ballpark of a vicinity?
Well, I think that's gonna depend on how far you wanna take it, and maybe.
I looked at what I could find online, which I think was a lockbox ordinance and the 2005 zoning ordinance.
They're
It was
talking about for our town.
for your town.
Okay.
It was under $10,000 to build the code, analyze it, do code review, get those edits and updates in there, and go to town meeting, everything adopted. The only thing that I couldn't identify is if there were other outstanding ordinances that you had that just weren't posted to the website.
You looked at our 236-page land use ordinance, and you're saying to do this process, it's gonna be around $10,000 based on what you saw online?
Yeah, it should be under 10.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's, some towns, it's expensive. I quoted a community in northern Maine, it was $32,000. They had a 1,250-page set of ordinances. So it's a lot of work. You
Yeah.
guys, 200-300 pages, it's really not that much.
So can you tell me what you do after the document's completed, going forward, if new ordinances come up?
Oh, yeah, so you want to adopt a new ordinance, town meeting, select board, however you do it. You send us the ordinance, we'll codify it into the code. It's called the supplement. You're adding supplementary code material. We'll print new pages. If you decided you wanted to have an online version of the code, we'll update it online. We'll invoice you for the supplementary code work. Your code's updated. It's as simple as saying, this is the new set of ordinances. We passed 10 of them at the 2025 Springtown meeting. Please update the code. Editors will go through, they'll make sure they go into the right spots. If there's something that, let's say there was an on-the-floor amendment at town meeting to make a change and somebody had the wrong citation. The editor will call you and say, hey, you guys amended X, Y, Z, but that number's not correct. What should be the correct number that you want us to use? We have one that we think is the most correct. So you're gonna have that expertise there to help you going on to adopt to maintain your code and add in new adopted ordinances. We want to give you a bedrock for the next 20 years worth of legislation. And I'll give you a really good example. The town of Alfred just started a recodification project.
Alfred, Maine?
Alfred, Maine.
Okay.
5 days ago, I got the signed proposal to start the work. We're gonna get everything underway in the next 20 days. Their code was last looked at almost 20 years ago. We gave them some updates and some changes that we recommended the first time we did it. They made some of those changes. They didn't make all of them. Now going through 20 years later, 2 decades, we know that we're gonna find some problems that are in there that they know that they have to address. And we're gonna figure out every other change that they've made over the last 20 years. Is there anything else that's not currently up to date or that there are problems or concerns? But when they first did this 20 years ago, they knew that they were gonna have 2 decades worth of time to build off of and set up their code for future success. Now, 20 years later, we're doing this process again. We're gonna give them the next 20 years. So we're in 2023 now. In 2043, if I'm still doing this, I'm gonna call them up and say, let's take another hard look at your code. It's, the way we look at this is it's an investment for the next generation or two of your town, your residents, your developers, anybody who wants to come through town and do something here, whether it's put a sign on the side of the road because they're selling birdhouses, or, maybe they want to do something more expansive. Your code is a public record. Your citizens have a right to know what's in there. You as municipal officials have a right to know what's in there. We want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it.
If there's a change in state law or rulemaking, do you notify the town?
During the code project, we'll let you know. After the code project, we expect that you are aware of changes at the state level. What we do offer is standalone analyses of codes so that if, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years down the line, you did a ton of changes, we can go through, it takes about 6 months, we'll give you an entire roadmap of things that we found problems with. City of Pittsfield, Mass. started one in January of this year, end of, I want to say April, early May. We gave them 350 questions. Their code hadn't been touched since the early 90s. But now they know what to work on and how to move forward. Their bylaw committee is going to go through that, because now they have an idea of what changed at the state level and what's still on the book at the town level.
So when you do this codification with the online version, will there be all hot links to every code that's actually called out in there to the state level? Will those links be?
There are links within the code itself to other parts of the code. It does not hyperlink to state statutes. Not every state has a good system. Take a look at New Hampshire, where I'm from. It's awful. Some states do invest in that, but because it's not consistent, we don't have a way to specifically hyperlink everything. But if, let's say there's a reference to like a Maine 2025 Shoreland Revision Act, we might leave that editor's note saying this was amended at the state level, the town made XYZ changes in XYZ years. So they'll build in those editor's notes to make it helpful. The neat part with the online platform is you can append notes and documents and attachments to the code. So if you think that there's material that you want to enhance the code experience for the average everyday person that's better than looking through a 300-page book, you can do that. You just tell your town administrator, or your town clerk, hey, we have a couple items that we think should be highlighted. I have one town in Connecticut where they won a lawsuit regarding accessory dwelling units. They appended the legal decision for that lawsuit, so when town residents complained, oh, why can't I do this? Well, look at the code, we won the lawsuit, we're right, and here's the judge's ruling.
John, did you have something? I thought you raised your hand there, sorry.
That's me again.
Alan?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you, have you told them that we can get resources from other towns? So if we're looking for a solar ordinance?
You have, if you go with the online version of your code, we call it eCode 360, you have access to our entire code library. We work with about 4,000 communities across the country. We have about 3,300 towns that have an offline code. Some people are paper only, don't ask me why. But in the state of Maine, I mentioned we have 31 active codes right now. You could look and say, hey, we want to have a dispensary in town, but we don't know how to regulate or set up the language for this. Who has done that in the state of Maine? You can look at every single one of our codes in our database. Snap of your fingers, you can pull it up. If you wanted to see what other people have done for shoreland zoning, you can look at shoreland zoning chapters and just search the terms that you're trying to find, and it'll tell you, hey, Alfred has this, Raymond has this, Bangor or Bar Harbor have these. So you have those additional resources. You can download Word copies of the code that are not cut and pasted, so it still maintains the format, just turn on track changes and it'll mark your edits. Then when you give it to your clerk to get ready for town meeting day, it still has the look and feel of code, and it's not just 2 sentences on Notepad.
Oh, no, I don't have any questions for this gentleman. My question would just be like, what does Jerry need from us? So.
Very informative.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for hearing me out. So,
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? No?
if you need anything, just send me an email, give me a call. I'm right down the road. So.
All right.
I'll leave you be. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's what I
Yeah,
was thinking
exactly.
too, that's, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
seriously.
I heard
Like-
99.99
Yeah,
there.
right? And then have the changes ready to go for town meeting this year.
Well, I think that the time frame.
Right, you may
time
know,
frame,
but
yeah.
you gotta get the process started. at
So,
something, right?
my question about this is, you can kind of piggyback on what you were asking earlier, Rich, is like, you were saying, do we bring this to town and say, do you all wanna vote on the codification process? But if it's under $10,000, I would say this kinda seems like a no-brainer, that we should just start the process. I mean, it's fixing errors that, you know, we've had discussions about, it just makes sense to me. And I think that one thing I hear a lot is people are like, you know, our resources aren't always approachable for a layperson, for lack of better words, so you end up cross-referencing this and that, and I think this just makes sense to go with it.
It's state law, so I mean, I think it just makes sense anyway, right?
I think it would save frustration amongst multitude of levels.
Yes, I agree,
And
completely.
I think that they know what they're doing, they're saying they can do it for under 10,000.
I mean, it's just an expectation they don't have to get it passed at this next meeting, because there is a process of public hearings and all kinds of stuff that have to be done before the first weekend.
Not if we're spending under 10,000.
No, he's
No,
talking
he's-
about passing the
He's
ordinance.
talking about
Yeah,
passing
I
the
mean,
ordinance.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
just starting the process of getting the codification done. I'm not
Like
talking
John.
about the ordinances there, so. I'm just advocating for us to do this, start the process sooner than later. Because the sooner we
Yeah.
start it, we might line ourselves up well enough to bring this to the 25 town meeting with the changes.
I mean, we just allocated up to
Yeah, I would,
last meeting, and I'd like to see what we spend on that before we
Mhm.
start saying, let's spend.
hopefully you won't spend
Couple
anything on this
thousand.
grant, will take care of it, hopefully.
Yeah,
I-
until there's an emergency.
So,
Well, that's gonna be the problem.
If I do know that GP cog does have grants associated with this type of thing, and I'm more than happy to like read through the information on that and bring that back to the board if people would be inclined for me to do that.
yeah, I mean, I guess, right, and I hear what you're saying, Heather. And also, are there any other options? So I realize this is one organization that does it. Are there other options, and what other, I know we've talked about MMA doing some of this for us as well at one point. So I just, is there a mix that can happen here that actually maybe reduces the cost a little bit? Or is it just you pick one shop and
Well,
go
if you
with
mix
it?
it, the left hand won't know what the right hand is
No,
doing.
I know, I get it.
How long would that, does it need to go up to bid? I can't remember. I
Ye-
do know 4 total companies, his is one of them, and then
Okay.
3 others,
Yeah.
so we can.
Thank you.
And this was really just more information for you
Mhm.
to chew
Yep.
on.
No,
I
this was
wasn't
great.
really expecting, any funds to be allocated.
Okay.
Like you said, you did 10,000 last meeting, we need to be careful how much this board starts
Alan's excitement was
Spending-
palpable, sorry,
spending money.
we all
Yeah,
jumped on the
and-
coattails.
spending money, but chew on it, and like I said, if I have to, it will be a capital request, because we'll have some ARPA money left over and that sort of thing, so
Yeah, that's
just
Yeah.
chew on it. I think it's a good thing to do, but let's go slow. I know it's exciting. Because it is, it's hard. I mean, Alan
Yeah,
has
no,
to,
Well,
read
but
the
I also
code
think like
books, and it's hard.
fiscally, like if we're talking about like financial piece of it, the fact that they have some of these ordinances that we wanna work on that already exist, that are in alignment with state law, right? That helps George, that frees up George,
Yeah,
because he doesn't have to necessarily like do all of that work.
The research is ridiculous.
Yeah, so what I was just gonna say is I think that the investment, the return on investment's pretty quick, because even with, I don't know how much time you spent, Alan, on the whole sign ordinance thing, but if the price point is $10,000 and we're cutting down several hundred hours of staff time and then freeing up their time to then work on things that are more valuable use of their time and expertise, I see this as kind of just like an investment in savings in the future, so.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why I just say, even before the presentation today, I was a big fan of codification, I think it makes sense. So I think that, if the process looks like getting additional, quotes or something like that, I think that that's something we should explore as a
Yep.
board
absolutely.
as soon as possible. I just think this is a high priority. I mean, everything comes down to, well, does our code allow this, or is this allowed, or should Alan do this, or should John do this? It's like, if we have a book that just makes it plain and simple, boom, it saves a lot of time, and time is valuable.
So you're gonna bring back you're gonna do some homework and then come back to us at a future meeting with some more information on this.
Yeah, can you spell out what you what you
No,
need.
if there's other companies and
Yeah, there's-
and what
yeah,
our
there's-
options
there
are.
are- we can-
If you're gonna,
we can go out
you're
to
gonna propose it
RFP
as a,
if you wanna do
yeah,
this.
if you're gonna
That's-
propose it as a capital, you're gonna be
Yeah,
doing more
I
homework
am.
anyway, so,
Do we
Yeah,
have
I'd
to
say-
vote for an RFP?
not at this point.
And part of this is trying to minimize the calls to the attorney saying, hey, can you tell us what this ordinance says?
Yeah.
We really
No,
wanna try and get away from that.
It
We
is,
should be able to kinda explain what the ordinance is
Okay.
without having an attorney say, well, you know, like what Alan had to do.
Heather, one.
I just wanna
last
circle
one.
back to, because I know that we've had discussions about whether or not we're acting as an individual or acting as a board. I'm formally asking the board for permission to look at grant opportunities around this situation. And I just wanna make sure that if we need to take a vote on that, if we need to, whatever needs to happen, to make sure that I'm, you know, rightfully seeking out that information, that I'm not gonna be doing that in a way that's not appropriate.
I think you can find them, it's under Jerry.
Yeah.
I think it crosses the line only if you're starting filling it out.
Yes.
Right.
Submit it.
Yeah, the,
But if I'm reaching out to GP cog, if I'm reaching out to MMA and I'm asking questions, no, that's all fine with everyone?
That's fine,
Yeah.
Okay.
yep, yep,
Thank
you
you.
just can't
As long as
commit
you
it.
don't engage in actually.
You know, I'm
applying
not gonna
for it.
like sign a
Yeah.
dotted line or
What you're
anything.
saying is reach out to GP cog, and say, are there any grants available for
Yeah,
X,
Yeah,
Y,
that-
Z?
Right.
And then it's
That's-
yes,
That's,
Jerry, here you go.
that's
Right.
open,
What
that's
they
open
found for
season,
us.
just
Okay.
can't commit or fill anything out.
Okay.
You have the top.
Yeah, the only thing I'd want to answer on is, and the chair, planning board kind of alluded to it, is what the actual processes are once, you do codify and what has to transpire before, after, before it goes into the books, for lack of more words.
Right, so these would be just existing ordinances that are already currently written,
Correct.
and we just wanna make sure they line up with the state.
Right, what
That's all we're doing.
process
Yeah.
do we have to go through if we elect to go this way, which it sounds like the majority of this board wants to do that, and what process has to take place prior to adopting, per se, the new ordinance? Is it just simply a town meeting, or is it?
Sounds like that's what he was saying, is that after we have the document, it's written, but it's not adopted, and then we go to town meeting and say, we've had this codified, here are the changes, does the town vote to
I think,
accept these changes?
I think what Rich is asking is the same thing, like when we did the RP changes, we had to have public input, we had to have a public hearing, we had to have
That's really.
those things,
Yeah.
and I agree that that is what has to happen.
I feel like that's substantive change, though,
Yeah,
this
that's
is,
a new ordinance.
yeah, that's a new
Oh,
ordinance,
okay,
and
okay,
that's,
that's a fair
that's
question,
changing
then that's
ordinances
fair.
Yeah.
that are already there, but
That's a good
don't line
point.
up with the state.
This seems like to me, like he said, if it says dog catcher and it's supposed to say code enforcement officer, if it says, you know, to do this, but state law says to do that, that's just lining it up.
But if our ordinance is completely opposite of the state law ordinance, that's a change.
That's a change, yeah.
And that's where it would be voted on.
That's what I mean, so
Yeah.
therefore it would trigger.
A public
a
notice and a public hearing.
So just
Yeah.
lay out that process.
I don't.
I never think that's a bad thing anyway. I think doing that regardless is always a good thing.
Letting
For me,
the
it's more
residents
of-
know we're gonna
it's
follow
more of
state
a-
law.
It's more of a
Yeah.
process.
Right.
I was just curious as to what
make
process
it
has to
binding.
take place to adopt the codification as a
Yeah.
town.
That might be determined too by what they find. If it's just semantics and stuff like that, or if they find, oh, this would require you to change your ordinance to meet with state law. But then again, I don't know if it's against state law. You know, so,
Does it supersede our ordinance?
yeah, well, and that's the question.
Is it?
Our,
as long
our
as
ordinance can't supersede state
Our
law.
ordinance
but
can be
the-
above state law,
That's
it
right.
just can't be below state
So
law.
there is-
There are things that George and I talk about just on a regular, that can't be right, because it just can't, it's not right. So those are gonna, they're gonna come out, you're gonna have things that are gonna have to change, because that doesn't make any sense. Because it says it over there, it says it over there,
Right.
and here we are.
I think
Oh, you
we
gotta
should
change that.
probably just
Science.
assume that it has to go through the same process
Right.
that
And
the
that's- yeah.
resource protection went through.
Well, I
With
think it
the-
would be a good idea anyway, so people
Absolutely.
have the opportunity to
Absolutely.
have that, you know, 2-hour discussion at town meeting of what is A, what is B, what
Right.
is C.
Yeah.
Right.
We still don't have a.
Oh, yeah, but you give people the chance to try.
This is exciting. This is my favorite thing that's happened since I've been a board member. I love it.
You gotta get out more.
Yeah, you mean solid waste, is it?
Solid waste is Josh's passion.
All
Okay.
right. We ready to
Speaking
move
of,
on?
yeah.
I think we're ready to move on. Okay. Solid Waste Committee. New business here.
That would be Heather.
Heather?
So I would like to propose the idea of creating a solid waste committee that is, under the same, school of thought that we did with the Union Church Committee. Like, our solid waste situation is a big deal. We've learned from Casella in a recent meeting that they're looking for a 5-year contract. And so I feel as though creating a solid waste committee to figure out what the long-term, this is the thing that's in our comprehensive plan, figuring out what our long-term solution plan trajectory for solid waste is one of the things that's in there. And I mean, Jerry has said, we do have a situation around solid waste. And so I think that this is a way to get as much information as we can and utilize members of the town that are interested. I know that a previous budget committee member really felt very strongly about this and wanted to head that up. And so I think this is an opportunity where we could get, some good research and options and involve other people in the community to look at this situation.
Joe?
I like the idea. I think that, like the Union Church Committee, I think having some sort of
Yes.
deadline of please come up with, find the information on options for solid waste for our municipality by this date to report to the select board would be a good idea, because I just think the deadline's important.
I agree.
I was happy to see it on the agenda, because it's hear a lot about solid waste through social media, through people just asking me, through public comment, so it's clearly something that people have a lot of thoughts and opinions on, so if it saves us time by having a group of individuals who are passionate about solid waste, do some of the groundwork, I think it's just a good idea.
So, I mean, did you have an idea of what the scope might be of this committee?
So what we've heard
Go ahead.
from so far is Casella, they're moving to an automated system, they want a 5-year contract, that's really the only option that we've been presented with.
Don't realize that, yep.
And so I know that I had seen a grant posted through Eco Maine, and because Durham is for the school, and Freeport and Pownell are both towns that are part of Eco Maine, but Durham is not. And so the RSU won't entertain or seek any of those grants through Eco Maine for the schools, because they can't do that equitably across all 3 towns. And so Jerry has a very full plate, and so I just feel like there's people who are really invested in this, and I'm not just saying Eco Maine, I'm just saying I know that there are other things out there, and I want to bring a group of people to the table that are really invested in this, that can research what those other options are, and then give us a more holistic picture of what our potential solid waste. There are also people who talk about wanting to have a transfer station in town, and so it's those kinds of questions that I feel like I would like to create a committee around to come back to us the way that the Union Church Committee is, with what other options are out there besides potentially and maybe we have to do the 5-year contract with Casella as a bridge to get to wherever we're going. I just want to know what the other options are.
I think primarily, we always reference Casella, but this hasn't gone out to RFP for a while. The way, in the past, the town put it out, and we had, let's say, a startup company apply, and one of the issues with that was we were gonna have to buy trucks and so forth for them to collect the trash, and we would get away. They were a little cheaper. They were gonna be cheaper than Casella at the time, I believe. But the issue was we were gonna be buying them trucks. Well, based on what Casella laid out,
Yes, exactly.
we're gonna be buying
Yeah, I was gonna say,
them
Yes.
trucks.
buying them trucks anyway.
So I guess if we're in the business of buying trucks, if we put this out as an RFP, you know, very similar to the RFP, and everybody's going to that standard as far as the non-labor standard of picking up trash, as far as the robotic standard, I guess, then we should go that route, see where we're at. Because I guess my question for the committee would be, is this for budgetary purposes? Is it for environmental purposes? Is it for doing a study on, you know, whether or not we should have a transfer station in town? I mean, there's just so many facets to this little
A lot of variables.
problem.
Mm-hmm.
That I'd just like to define exactly what it is we're looking for. Are we looking for the best bang for our buck for the trash? Are we looking for all of the above? Because,
Or, I mean, potentially what we're looking for is, you know, if we're going out to RFP, 5 years is a long time. We don't typically do a 5-year contract. We've done 3 years and we've done an extension, right?
Yeah,
And I get that they wanna do the 5 years because we're essentially buying them a truck. When he said that, I was like, whoa.
Well, but at the same time, he's pretty much saying that they will only renew if they get bought a truck and they go to automatic. 'Cause
Well, that's
it's like,
just
so
it,
like,
right.
if we say no, what goes on, what do we do with that trash?
well, no, I think that's what my
Well,
point is.
that's right.
I'm
I wanna
trying to
know.
see, like, they may not be the only one that we might be required by a truck, but other people might be able to offer the service for less. So if it's from a financial standpoint, then put it out to RFP. But if it's from financial, environmental, and so forth, like I said, there's so many facets to quote-unquote trash, whether it's bulk trash or recycling. I mean, there's so many elements to it that I don't necessarily, I don't fully grasp yet what we're gonna try to define here as far as a committee.
I guess, would this committee then just essentially be exploratory for what the town's opinion is on what we should do with waste management moving forward? Like, you know, it could just be, I don't know if they function similarly to like how the Conservation Commission does a survey or town questionnaire or town hearing just to gather information, because some people may say, I want roadside, some people may say, I want this, some people may say something totally different, you know?
The
So it's
town
just to
may-
give us some information.
The town may have changed. Historically, the town has wanted pretty overwhelmingly curbside pickup.
Yeah.
So what if we just, what if we all, you know, we've come up with what the task is right now? Like, what is the most fiscally advantageous route? What is the most environmentally, what are the, I know that like North Yarmouth, they do a mix. They have a EcoMaine component, they have a green to garden to, I don't know what it is. You know what I'm trying to say?
Composting.
Yeah, that, they have
Composting,
that,
yeah.
and they also have Casella. And so, what does that look like? You know, like, to me, I'm assuming that that's like the environmentally friendly route, right? So, if we just come up with, like we did for the Union Church, 3 or 4, this is what we're looking for information. One of those could be, what does it look like if we move to a transfer station?
Well, right, so
You know?
if we did do a committee looking at the options for, comparing the options of a transfer facility to going with, I'll call it the mixed waste route, using a multitude of companies, as well as looking at rolling in, you know, what would it take to roll in, I'll call them the private roads, the roads that aren't currently under the town hospices of public roads, because I think that also may pose problems for certain types of pickup. And it, and then the transfer station I already mentioned, you guys mentioned, so
Or, and
looking at
then
the
also
various.
eliminating. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what I'm advocating for, but that is potentially an option.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, to sum it up, what I was trying to say is the root cause of this, the cost of what Casella is proposing? If so, we should go to RFP first. We don't have to accept anything that comes back on the RFP,
Okay,
but at least
Yeah.
minimally see what
You can see
the
what's out
options
there.
are
okay.
from a financial perspective for the town.
I actually kinda like that idea, Rich.
And
So-
then
Joe.
formulate a committee per se, going forward.
Can I just add something? The town staff received several calls about subdivisions, especially the newer subdivisions, about the Casella not going down the road, and they're not gonna let up on it.
Could
Right.
can we just know what when the planning board reviews a subdivision, what happens around solid
private
waste?
road.
It's a private road, so
Consider
they
it
just don't
private
go down
road,
it
so
because
they
it's a
won't.
private road.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they are allowed to put all their trash out at the end to get picked up.
At the public road, yes, at the nearest public way.
And is there anything legally that prevents them from going down a private road?
It's been a while since I dabbled with that, but more than likely it's due to they wouldn't want to be liable for ruining that road, so they won't go down it. So if it's a dirt road or some road that's not up to standards, they could, dump a truck into a big pit in the middle of the road, and it's happened. So they have a liability, and the people on that road have a liability that nobody wants to be burdened with, so.
Okay.
I think that's mostly why that doesn't occur until it's accepted. Mr. Talbot?
I was just saying, Heather had asked earlier, there is nothing in the land use ordinance that precludes picking up trash on a private road.
Right.
Doesn't mean that, it's probably more of a Casella
It,
question
it,
than it is
it could be more of a contractual discussion with the companies that we have to have, but it is usually what they come up with, that they won't do
I
the
think
private road.
some of it is where do you draw the line when it's a private road, so if you've got a guy
Right.
that has a 700-foot driveway, you're gonna drive down to his house to pick it up.
Yeah, that too plays
So,
into it, but,
There's a lot,
So-
and there's a
Yeah.
lot that goes into it.
Rich, was your suggestion more or less just for us to open up an RFP for trash collection for the town of Durham? And then, based off of that, maybe then you say, well, we wanna pull together a committee that looks at these options and gives us some feedback, or who knows, we might just like what's laid on the table so well and it scratches all the itches.
Be careful with that. Can we go, well?
No, I'm asking.
And open the bids and then start negotiating?
No, I mean, cause you had mentioned you
No,
could
you can't
get,
negotiate, but you don't have to accept RFPs, and you can go
Yeah.
back out to an RFP if you
you'd have to go
want
back out.
You'd have to go back out, yeah. If you, but if you didn't, what I was getting at is if you didn't like any of them and you had an extended, contract, let's say for the next 2 years, then you could formulate a committee during that time.
But I was trying to get to the point of, if this is what you're doing and you're planning ahead, who's gonna wanna come back into these RFPs 2, 3, 4 times?
Oh, nobody
So I just
does,
wanna-
that's why you just ask for one, I mean, that's, you just don't have to accept it is what I'm getting at. And then if it's not a suitable option for you from a financial or whatever situation it may be, then you could formulate a committee. My question really was, are we formulating the committee because of the cost of Casella, or is it being triggered by other reasons? That's why I asked.
I think it's more the option. I know Casella, I know the truck sounded daunting. I'm not sure you get away from the cost at all with any option. Any option is not gonna be reasonable, I'll say. It's gonna cost us. We're seeing that all over, with all the towns around us. They're all reposturing, but it is costing them a lot of money to do that. Heather?
Rich, your answer from me is the EcoMaine is what originally, when I was seeking out the grant, that was originally what got me. Then I started doing a little bit of research and I was like, oh, other towns are doing these multi-resource ways of dealing with this. Then Casella came and talked to us and he sounded like it was a hard line for a 5-year contract. And then the truck conversation. And so I just want to make sure that everybody else recalls that conversation the same way that I did. Is that true, that what we heard him say was a 5-year contract?
Yeah, we specifically asked them that.
Okay, so and then that's where I was a little bit confused after, because I did speak with I called Pownell, and I talked to Pownell, and he was saying that there were no other towns that were in the situation when I was saying, are we gonna buy the truck? And he said that he was trying to get towns that were close to each other to be able to basically pool resources to do that. Pownell just signed a contract with them, but their contract was for 3 years. Well, that's what
Did you talk to Becky?
I did. She told me 3 years.
Yeah, it's 5. And years 3, 4, and 5 don't have a price to it because they're gonna up the price on the consumer price index for collecting trash.
I
So
just
maybe
talked
that's
to
what
the
she
other
was
day.
referring to, was that it wasn't a fixed price for
Yeah,
5 years.
Yeah, it's not a fixed price. It's a-
Okay.
CPI.
And so,
Yeah.
anyway, to answer your
Right.
question, for me, it's all of those things.
No, that's fine, no, that's where, like, I'm not an
Yeah.
advocate of, I'm fine with either way, I was just curious as to what the trigger was as far
Yeah.
as.
So I just wanted to talk about it, because I talked to Becky too, because towns are dealing with this now, so they're putting out there on main town city listserv, hey, do you have this, do you have that? So, one of the things the committee could work on, if you have one, is a trash ordinance. So, I've got a couple for examples. Becky did go out to bid 5 years. Casella was the only person, the only company that bid. I said, Triano or none of them bid? They said, no, they don't wanna get into the residential trash pickup. Casella was it. And that's when she said, here's 3, 4, and 5, no price. They're gonna up it or do whatever they do based on the consumer price index. So years 3, 4, and 5, they don't even know what it's gonna cost pounds. So it's kinda like what you're looking at. And every town, like I grabbed some information from the town of Bowdenham, because they're in the same boat we are too. They're trying to grapple with where are we going
So
with our
are-
trash. So you have to go out with that kind of money, you have to
Right,
go out
you
with
have
RFP.
Okay.
That has to be the way it goes. And you can just see what happens and,
So do we make a motion to do that, and then,
I don't know if we're there yet.
yeah, well, so we're gonna probably wanna know as we get into the budget season. We don't wanna wait too long.
Well, that's
So
not-
at least we have at least some numbers to go on to put the budget together for 2024. So they're up in July, so if we went out to bid, say, I don't know, November, maybe? So we had at least a price to put into the budget. I mean, that's up to you folks. I'm just thinking this, how you wanna do it.
so if we're gonna wait to do this based on numbers, then I would like to like pull back and go back to, I wanna form a solid waste, I would like to form a solid waste committee now, because our contract is up in the end of June,
Yes.
right? We need to know, going into budget season, what we're gonna do, because our contract is up in June. And so, I think that we should form the committee, put the details and the parameters and the time limit around it, so that when we're having that conversation, because if we wait to do this, and then our contract is up in June, and the only option that we have is a 5-year contract, I'm not saying that this is I know everybody, like, I'm in a hurry all the time, right? I understand that. I'm not saying that the 5-year contract can't be a bridge to whatever our long-term solution is, but I don't wanna wait until we've committed to a 5-year contract and then do the solid waste. This information could potentially change if we're gonna do a pooled resource, or if we're gonna, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, with that said though, once you do a 5-year, I don't know what the life expectancy of those trucks are yet, so once you buy and pay for the
They'll
initial
tell you after 3
depreciation.
years.
Right, you might see significant savings after 3 or 4 years, potentially, I'm not saying that's gonna be the case. I just, there's so many variables here, facets to this that.
Right, so let's get a committee and tell us what they are.
Can we buy it and lease it back to them?
Yeah, what if we buy the truck and then?
Well, that's the other thing too, is
I
that,
don't have a problem with the, sorry.
oh no, I'm sorry, I interrupted you,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
trying to answer your, I don't have a problem with the committee, I just think the RFP needs, there's not a lot of time. And so I don't, that's my only 2 cents.
Yeah, I think anything else is gonna be a long-term look at things. You're still gonna have to bridge, as you mentioned, in the meantime, whether we do a transfer station. But you could include in the RFP, at least asking about private roads. And then the RFP could indicate, environmental options, being as a, say, a stub out to it. We can take multiple bids from, set it up so it's sectioned out for trash only, environmental items only, this is we're sectioning out that wording.
Jerry, I don't wanna beat the weeds on this, cause, it's, I think the question really is, do we want to form a committee or not, but I was just curious as to, is MMA giving any directives as to what towns, in terms of planning for and/or combining resources, et cetera, moving forward, cause I'm guessing we're not the only small town in the state of Maine that's gonna be forced or, you know, with this particular problem.
Give
Right.
it one day.
Right.
Right.
Is MMA saying anything? That's what his question started
I
with.
haven't heard anything from
So it's
MMA as far as regionalization
Or
of.
MMA, or even, maybe even a GP cog if they're
Yeah.
gonna be sending us up, because I mean, I would think that,
GP cog, I could reach out to them to see what they're hearing as far as that. I mean, some towns are just giving it up, they just,
throw their hands up and say, hey, we gotta go with.
or just throw it up and say, take care of your own trash. You know, I'm not saying that, but that's what's,
No,
I mean, Auburn got rid of their,
Recycling.
recycling, they said, we're not doing it
Yeah,
anymore. I mean.
It's the
so
cost, right?
it-
There's
it's-
no
it's the
savings in
cost.
recycling.
It is the cost of.
If I
doing
remember
this
correctly
business.
from budget season, they said that it actually cost us, and I don't even wanna say this out loud, cause it like pains my soul, but that it costs more to recycle than it does to just throw everything in the regular trash.
Recycling in Eco Maine is more of being more green. That's
Mhm.
the, that's
Problem is,
what,
there's no market, is what
Right.
we've been told.
Right.
So therefore, the stuff's ending up in the landfill anyways.
Right. There is a person locally that is, I think, can we do both? Can we just like do both? Can we put it out to RFP and then also form the committee?
I thought that's what Rich was suggesting.
Yeah, I-
yeah, I think so.
Like-
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect,
The question
great.
really is, are we
That's where I
forming a
was at.
committee, not necessarily RFP tonight? I have
Okay.
no problem with formulating a
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, so
I was just trying to define exactly
Okay,
what the purpose and more importantly, what was the trigger for formulating the committee and so forth.
okay.
And to me, it sounds like just information gathering about trash collections options. They
What are
might
our
say,
options
they
is
might
what we're
say,
looking for.
this company can do trash only, this company can do recycling and it costs this, or this company can do both,
Okay.
or it sounds like our RFP is gonna get back with one bid that has a magical price that changes every
So I think,
3, 4, and
so I
5 years,
So I
but.
think we're on forming a committee.
Mhm.
We should probably put some verbiage around what that committee's gonna do,
yeah,
which,
yeah, well, Justin and I can get the applications going, see who wants to sit on this committee. Just need direction from you folks on,
I think we should do 5 members and 2 alternates.
Oh.
Make a motion.
okay? Okay, that's a start.
and the scope of the committee.
Yep, I think we should do the, what you had said originally, those 3 things that you wrote down.
Yep, the transfer station option, okay, incorporation of, I'll say all roads, private and public. And then the environmental options, and then also looking at the trash ordinance. So
When you say environmental options,
Meaning
recycling
separate, meaning all the recycling, composting, what are all the options available to us to possibly go after, separating everything out even more. There may be some benefit in that if we, you know, an Eco Maine and a separate trash collection.
yeah, cause I was just gonna say, do we even need to get that fine detailed, or can we just say, create a committee that explores options for solid waste in town?
You could go that simple, just making sure that Jerry had the right scope of what we want the committee to look at when he puts out the word.
I'm sure there are people in town that like to talk trash.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have input on this? This is near and dear to your heart, are you sure? Okay.
Josh doesn't care as long as the trash gets picked up.
Customer service would be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were adding things to this committee's to-do list, it would be to follow up and check on their customer service and
I do think
That's
it's
also
important though,
customer service
because the
subcommittee to the trash
RSU
committee.
is missing out on grant dollars because we're not, our town is not part of that. That is something that I would like
Part
for
of
them.
Eco Maine.
Yes, what does that entail for us to become part of that so that the school can apply for those grant dollars?
So that's probably one particular task.
That's
Right,
one task
right,
of the
yes,
scope, yeah.
Yes, that's what yes.
Do we need to vote on this? I think we're, you got your,
You got my much.
I don't think we need to.
Well, I think.
I think we
Yeah.
have to vote to
For-
form the
if you're gonna
committee.
form a committee.
Okay.
So would you like me to make the motion?
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to form a solid waste committee of 5 members and 2 alternates, and that they will report back to us all the things that we just said by, what are we comfortable with?
December first.
I'm gonna say October first, yeah, I'm like, it's a short,
I think that's a little short.
I think it's a
was
little
gonna say
short.
January 1.
Yeah.
Okay, I was okay with January
Yeah.
1, because then it will be within budget conversation this year.
Okay,
Is that,
Yeah,
I'm good.
are we,
works for me.
okay, so by January 1st. And, which leads us to our next agenda item, but let's take a vote, or a second, yeah.
For a second,
Second.
12 seconds. Any further discussion?
Just about the 5 members and 2 alternates. It doesn't automatically include members of this board or any other board, right? We would have to apply.
Yeah, you have to apply.
Josh wants to amend the motion.
Are you interested in having
No,
a
I just-
liaison, or?
I just wasn't, because I thought there was discussion, but it was just a while.
Go ahead, no, it's discussion, yeah.
Do you want one
No,
of
I
the?
don't, I don't.
No, let me finish my question. Do you want a member of this board to sit on that board or not sit on that board? And would you like a liaison to this board?
No, I thought there was a discussion last meeting or when this first got brought up that there was going to be a select, that's why. That's
Okay,
just a
okay, okay.
recollection I had, and I
Okay.
could be dead wrong.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we're on the same page.
I thought there was, and that's why.
5 members, 2 alternates.
I could go either way on it, so it's
It was
up
just
to the board if we wanna add another.
I'd say
Yeah.
5 members, 2 alternates, so they have questions for us, they can
I
come to
don't
any
think it's
meeting.
I don't think it's a contentious subject that the select board members could not attend, and participate. I think it's a subject that's near and dear to everybody's heart, so I would persuade a member not to go. I think it'd be maybe helpful in some regards.
The one other thing that I would like to add to the discussion is that if you could open up the applications as soon as possible, so that when we get to our next agenda item, it pertains to that. That's the only other
Okay.
thing I'd like to add.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to appoint 5 members and 2 alternates to a solid waste committee to be formed, to look at various options of possibly a town transfer station, including all roads in the town, environmental type options such as composting and other environmental friendly options available to the town, and the trash ordinance, among other things that will fall into place there when they start talking. All in favor, usual manner. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Form a solid waste committee.
Thank you.
Okay. So we, Chief?
On that subject, I understand members of that committee you just formed need to fill out a form or an application.
Yes.
I was just reached out by the assistant fire chief, who was the manager of the Yarmouth transfer station, would like to throw his hat in the ring. Can be a member, so
Wonderful.
we'll contact, but,
Okay, thank you.
watching on, closer.
Jeez.
We got a large fan following here tonight.
That's what
Hey,
it
sometimes
is.
we get like
Yeah.
120.
Over 100, yeah, I know, it's great, I love it.
It's Heather
All right.
watched it 9 times.
That's right. It's true. Oh, taking notes while
Okay.
we're
I
watching.
it live.
All right. Okay, next agenda item, meeting notice, public posting.
Oh, okay, here, I'm gonna pass out my stuff.
Okay,
All this paper, we're really gonna figure out where.
we're gonna need another meeting, I can tell you that.
Thank you.
Actually, here, just throw.
Yeah, we'll go.
They're like this.
There we go.
Yes, you did get this in an email also.
Yeah, I get it in the email anyways.
I got an email too, yeah, we're good. Oh, there's another set there, is what it was. You want this, Jay? What do you have, Heather?
Okay, so, we used to do this, what you're looking at in front of you, which are postings that happen in the news,
The newsletter?
the news section, or what is it called on the website?
On the front
Upcoming, yes, in the news blast.
Yep.
And also on the town website, whenever we had, you know, subdivision, site walks, those types of things that were happening, we were posting those meetings, on the website and in the newsletter and in the, on Facebook, yes. And so what you have here are examples of those postings. For whatever reason, that's not happening anymore. And I think that it's really important for that to be happening on a regular basis as part of our, operation or process or whatever you wanna call it of how we do this. Personally, I believe that every final decision that's made deserves the right to have, at the very least, public comment. And I feel like we can do a better job of making sure that residents in the community know when these types of meetings are happening, especially site walks, because that's really the only opportunity for people to be able to see what projects look like, what the area looks like, and for notice like this to not be widespread. I take issue with that. And so I don't know what needs to happen, if it's something that we need to vote on as a directive, if there's a conversation that needs to take place, if, you know, Jerry takes his direction from us for his staff, and so I believe that this is very, very important, and I would like to see this happening the way that it used to happen. I'm not sure why it doesn't happen anymore.
So, are you kind of saying that, I mean, I pulled up the website while you were talking, and just saying that there is town news and there's a town calendar. Are we just saying that we want that posted on the town calendar?
It is currently posted on the town calendar, but that's the only place that it's posted. It used to be
Okay.
posted on the town calendar and then also shared in various places that are much more visible. The only way to see this now is if you go into the town calendar, right? But when it's posted in this way, it's almost like newspaper. Like, it's more readily available, more people see it. I'm not sure why this stopped. I don't even need to know why it stopped, but
I know why it stopped.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jerry.
The planning board had a planning board secretary, and she took care of that. There's no,
She was like 30
she was
hours a week.
full-time.
She's a planning board secretary.
We
and
don't
she
have
was the
that.
media.
We don't have that
So-
employee.
so I thought that this was done by the information tech, right? The
They-
person who did that job, and don't we have a person who currently sits in that role?
Yeah, we do, but they're at that window 16 hours a week. They're only budgeted for 20, so 4 hours, they take care of putting things on the website, that sort of things, news blast, whatever it is. And she actually puts it on the calendar, but doesn't go into this detail. I'm assuming the person that did this before as the planning secretary was the same person, correct?
Yeah.
So she's probably doing it while she was at the meeting.
Exactly.
So it's,
So I'm not even necessarily caring about the detail of this, but if we're sharing like meetings that are happening at AMVET, or we're sharing, you know, these other types of things that are happening, this to me, it holds equal importance, and so I feel like this needs to be shared and posted.
so let me ask you, so you got, mostly this is the planning board, do you want the same thing to happen to the select board
We
meetings?
used to do the agenda, it would be like this right here, shared in a post.
Facebook post?
Mm-hmm.
I think the agenda was posted on the town website. I can't recall on the, what's it called, whether it was posted separately on the
Right.
Facebook
You
page.
can look at past issues of the news blast. You can go on the news blast and look at past issues and see what was posted.
Yeah, I was just, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, when I go on the website, I operate under the assumption that the thing up front that says town news is gonna provide me with the most pertinent information.
Mhm.
And you know, I know that if I go to town calendar, you can see all the meetings and stuff like that. But like in the example of like site walks, I don't go to the town calendar and then start clicking on everyone's meeting and saying, is there any site walk going on this week or whatever? So I can see value in that sort of information being in this kind of landing page that's kind of like the kind of stuff that traditionally before the internet would just be pinned to the board in the meeting space or in the town office and stuff like that. So I like the idea of making sure people know that those sorts of things are happening and making it easier to find rather than having to dig for information.
I mean, we used to even go as far as, like, when there was an appeal, the appeal would get posted on the marquee out at the road. I'm not saying that that needs to happen, but they had to do like multiple avenues of posting. And so one of them was the marquee out at the end of the driveway for appeals meetings.
Yeah, so like, for example, like in terms of finding information, recent site walk for a proposed change to a campground or whatever, that's hard information to find right now on the website without that digging in. And I don't have, you know, I don't think it was in any of the news blasts or stuff, but that sort of information has been shared in the past. So.
Rich?
Yeah, my thing is, I don't have a problem with this, I don't see anything wrong with it, I guess my only question is, are we meeting the legal requirement that is required for us when we have site walks, planning board reviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that's really.
Yes.
So isn't it a simple, I mean, if there's 4 hours for posting and stuff every week, can't we just ask George or the planning board chair or somebody to say, here's the upcoming meeting, I mean, she posts our agenda to the website, so putting it out on Facebook should be a simple 5-second task. Here's the agenda to the next meeting, such a date at 6:30 at the town office. Can we say, you know, I don't know how often the planning board is doing site walks, but, you know,
It'd be as simple as the planning board telling Kimberly to put it and she do it.
Put it right
It'd be
on.
as simple as that.
so if that's what we
She's
want,
a-
I could care less either way, but if that's what we want, then.
And-
I can care less either, I just wanna make
We
sure.
should just ask
it's
it to be done.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is because there was a final decision made on something, and it wasn't posted. And there are a lot of people who are really frustrated that there was a project that went on for a very long time. And when it was finally at the point where the final decision was gonna be made and the public was gonna now, which has typically, historically, if you look back at this, had the opportunity to make a public comment on a project, that didn't happen. And there's a lot of people who are frustrated about that. And so, hearing those frustrations, I'm bringing this before everyone to say, I would like for us to follow this process that we've always followed, and that when the final decision is gonna be made, the public has the opportunity to make a public comment. And the way that they know that that's happening is by the posting.
Personally, I think, I have no problem with that, I'm not trying to say, but I think we need to define exactly what the process is, because what you may think is the process, what I may think of the process, and what, someone else might think of the process may be different. I mean, if we're meeting the legal requirements versus meeting the minimum legal requirements versus going above and beyond, I think that's two different things. I have no problem with directing the town to do something specific as far as, but exactly what is it that, there's a lot of things that quote unquote could be posted, if you're posting every
Yeah.
time a board makes a decision.
Right, I mean, are we gonna do this with the select board,
Right.
are we gonna do it with all the other boards, I mean, where do we, and you tell me, I just wanna know.
To me, the easiest solution to that is, aren't all of the agendas for every board posted on the website?
On the calendar.
Yeah.
So,
They're there
well,
already.
they're on the website, the agendas are on the website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Separately. So can we just ask Kimberly to then, when she gets the agenda, she's posting it, to do that next step and post it? Because
Sure.
I mean, yeah,
As a line item.
is it,
So you're just saying every time there's an agenda
it's,
type,
whenever there's a,
post the
whenever it's
agenda
posted on
on.
the website,
on the town.
it goes to the website, then to Facebook.
I got a problem with that, or Twitter, or whatever the hell you call it.
Whatever.
I think it's X.
Whatever, I like the X, whatever.
Yeah.
Transparency is great.
Yeah,
I don't think that's too much extra work.
No, no,
all right. That
So
good?
do we need something,
Yes.
do you need something official from us that?
no, I'm just gonna, I'll
Just a
talk to
clear
Kimberly
direction.
and I'll talk to George and we'll just try to get everything out there on all the, media
Platforms.
outlets, platforms, yeah.
But the key is just tell Kimberly, when George sends her something, put it on.
She's usually pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess the question about the comment though, sometimes these meetings don't allow for a comment at that time. I don't know, I'd have to look at the planning board's agenda.
I know specifically that final, at least in every other past, thing, and I really went back and I looked, because I want my word to mean something when I say it, right? And so when there have been we were arrived at the final decision of a project, and along the way, public comment is not taken. It's taken initially when the project is proposed, there's that opportunity, right? And then throughout, when they're doing their business, they're not accepting public comment. And then when it's the meeting where the final decision is gonna be made, historically, people have had the opportunity to make a public comment.
Okay.
I'll just say, that he hears it wasn't done, we follow the rules, and if we're talking about that one particular thing, we follow the rules. So I want to be real clear about that.
Cause George is real stickler about that
George will
stuff.
say as am I, so we follow the rules.
Yeah, so I don't,
So if that's gonna be the new practice, I think that people, it's kinda like the thing that you were saying about the ambulance. If all of a sudden we're gonna start charging a bill, right, when that hasn't done before, it's nice to have a notice that says,
We're no
We're-
longer doing this,
right.
or we
And
are doing
so,
this.
so now, if we're no longer allowing public comment at a final decision, because that's following the rules, people were waiting for that opportunity. And so if following the rules means that opportunity doesn't exist, I think we need to state
yeah,
that.
we'll have to.
Usually the butters are notified.
They're notified at I thought that there was another notification when the final situation got to it, but it's out of the gate originally,
It's
when
out
the
of the
public,
gate
and that's
originally.
when the public comment had been.
So it seems like we're in a situation where we had previously gone above and beyond, so people adopted that as the new norm.
That's
And so
probably-
meeting changing to meet the minimum caught people off guard, so they were like, oh, well, where's the notice for this? And it's like, oh, well, we don't actually have to do that, we've just done it in the past, we're not doing it.
It's kinda like our public comment. We used to
Yeah.
allow public comment, we
Right.
capped it probably 2 years ago. to 20 minutes.
But still,
me.
please understand, you had a full-time
Oh, yeah, yeah.
information officer
Yeah.
that could do this, and now,
Yeah.
that's all she did.
Yeah.
And that's fine, I
Yeah.
just feel like,
So there was-
if we're not gonna do that anymore, and people have come to expect that, we need to let people know that we're not gonna be doing that anymore. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I mean, I've been to our town, and I've been before planning boards in other towns, and usually the notifications go out in that first meeting is when the people get to say their, what their problem is or non-problem is with it, and that's typically it.
Are we talking about two different things though? I mean, I don't wanna belabor this point.
We are.
We're talking- But,
Yeah, go ahead.
and the public comment at the planning board is an issue for the planning board and not for us,
I
right?
agree,
Right.
I agree, so.
Okay, so that's it. So Jerry, you gonna take a look at?
Yeah, we'll get Kimberly right on it, yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, you will.
So next subject is, do we need another meeting?
Oh,
Add a
that's me
meeting?
too.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just think, go,
So part of why I was asking for another meeting is because Jerry's gonna be gone for the first 2 weeks of October, and we
Yep.
have a lot of business to take care of.
Yep.
And now if we're doing the solid waste committee, I think if we don't schedule another meeting, we're gonna be pushing off making those appointments for too long, based on the timeline that they have. And so, and then additionally, we had all said that we were interested in going through the comp plan and kind of checking the boxes of what's been done and what, whatever. And I know we're dealing with a lot of stuff, I just think that another meeting is important because of making those appointments and the fact that Jerry's gonna be gone for 2 weeks.
yeah, my thought on it is to, unless anyone feels much different, is to hold off and see how this goes. I think Jerry's probably got a plan for coverage during his outage, so.
When are you done, Jerry?
So-
I leave September 30th, the first 2 weeks of October. So it'd be the second Tuesday in October, like the 10th.
Yeah, it's the time.
Yeah.
Part of me is kinda like pound businesses like laundry, it never really ever gets done. You can have, you can do laundry 24 hours a day, 7
Yeah.
days a week, if you got a couple of babies at home, you're still never getting caught up.
I mean, we're still gonna meet, and Jerry's not gonna be here. Unless it gets really stacked up, you know, we have put other meetings in between, depending on what's going on. That could be an option as
Jerry, can you
well.
tell us what you have on deck for the next meeting? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the
No, no,
spot.
I don't.
I
Right now,
apologize for
don't
that.
know. Look at
Sorry, I did put him on the spot, I apologize.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jerry, but can you
Why
tell me what you
why
got
don't we
going on?
just, why don't we just let this one go for this week, this meeting, and then if next meeting, as we get the agenda going, get the committees going, if we revisit it, we can revisit it on
Okay.
for a meeting basis.
So our next meeting right now would be scheduled for September 12th, is that correct?
Yes, September 12th and September
Yeah.
26th is what we have.
So that's gonna give that committee,
But, again, there's agenda, what's on our item, on our agendas at that point, and that'll give us time, if we need to post another meeting, we've got plenty of time to post another meeting.
oh, you're saying before the 12th?
Saying that when we get here on the 12th, we can
Okay, so
decide.
what I was saying is that if we wait until the 12th to have a meeting, we're not gonna be making appointments to that solid waste committee until September 12th, and we've told
Yeah.
them that we want their work completed by January 1st.
Mhm.
Everybody's comfortable with that?
I mean,
Okay.
I think
Can we
it's
please
fine.
put it on the agenda for the 12th, that we'll make appointments for the solid waste committee?
Okay, so are we down to number 8 now?
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was talking about the extra meeting,
No,
and
I
that's why I
know,
wanna
right,
add a meeting.
So you want to talk about what on the next meeting?
I would like to make the appointments to the solid waste committee on September 12th,
Okay, we
please.
can do that. Just one question, what if we don't get enough applicants?
I think it's not gonna be hard to get.
Okay. Right.
Deal with that
Okay.
on the 12th,
Hmm?
deal with that on the 12th.
Yeah.
We didn't set up a deadline for
we'll just, we'll,
applications are due, we were saying up to the meeting starting.
I'm fine with
To
Fine with
September
that.
1th?
Yeah, that's fine.
that. Those
Yeah.
are here before we appoint
Yep.
somebody. I can
say,
put that date
go
in.
in the back,
Yeah.
just put Josh.
Okay? All right, appeals board appointment,
Okay, so yeah, let me just brief you on that. So Neil, got in touch with Neil Barry.
I didn't realize he was an
He was he was an alternate, so he asked if he filled out his application to be a full voting member. Huh?
Doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to be?
Well, didn't we just do that with Brian though? But we don't have to?
No, we didn't do it with Brian.
Oh, we just
No,
talked
no.
about it.
No, Brian.
No, I'm just
If
letting
he's
you-
an alternate, he's,
And someone leaves,
he's
you just kinda get,
advanced, he's now
Right.
not an alternate, and now we can put out a request
For
to
an alternate.
fill that alternate seat.
But I'm just letting you know that Neil wants to do that. Like, he could have the option to say, no, I wanna stay an alternate, I don't wanna be.
right, right.
So I'm just letting you know that, and he's letting us know that he wants to be that
Okay.
full voting member.
Why, that's between him and the board. I mean, that's not really us. I mean,
Okay.
our option is, they're short a body, are we putting out that particular board needs another body, and then we're accepting applications for that? That's really what our rule is.
All right. Okay,
Thank you for letting us know.
all right, so
Thank you,
we'll
Neil,
cross
for
out.
stepping up. Filling that open position.
So we can put that in with the trash. Give me
so now we need an alternate.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Jerry, town manager's report?
Yes, me. So one thing that I wanna let you all know is because of, the town's excellent safety performance, no, seriously, the MMA has discounted our workman's comp by 10%, cause we've kinda met their, workers' comp incentive program. So we're doing a bunch of things. They've been doing it. I mean,
Good job.
they have been doing it. It's just a matter of filling out the right paperwork, talking to the right people, getting the right things in place, and they just notified the other day that January 1st, we'll get a 10% discount. So
That's awesome.
that's pretty good.
Good job to all the.
Yeah, they do
all
a
the
great job.
Employees for going through that training and
Um,
every day and every week.
Another thing that I wanna bring to your attention, I just got a voicemail yesterday, and I just got this letter today from DEP, so you can see it's dated August 22nd, so I don't have a ton of information, but what this is DEP's coming through town, and they're gonna wanna test the farms that have spread sludge on their property, and they're gonna wanna test their groundwater and the ground, so I don't I'll put that on the website. I called up DEP today, I didn't get anybody, because I had some questions like what specific properties are they going to and that sort of thing, but I didn't get a call back, but I'll keep you updated.
Okay.
So, can I just, so, if anybody is gonna have any questions in regard to this, there is a phone number. And the guy that you're gonna wanna talk to, his name is David Madore, he's the Deputy Commissioner of the Communications Director for DEP. His number's 207-287-5842, so they come knocking on your door or send a letter and they wanna test your property, test your groundwater, this is the reason why. I mean, this has been going on for a couple years now. Durham was in tier 3 out of tier 4 for the DEP. So again, I don't have a ton of information right now because I just got this. I just want you all and I want the residents to be aware that they're coming through, so.
If you're interested in specific properties, there is a database that you can click on, our town, and you can see exactly what
Okay, yeah,
what
absolutely.
properties the state has marked as properties that have that situation.
Okay.
Permit to spread that.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that's part of, like,
That's why they know the property,
Right.
because it shows that they received a permit 10, 20, 30
Right.
years ago, so then depending on how much has been spread or how often.
and so this goes back to the codification, is that it's still in our land use ordinance that that's allowed, when obviously that's not allowed, but we still have it in our ordinance that we allow it.
And they did my house and all my neighbors' houses probably 8 or 10 months ago.
Did they?
So they've been working off the little dots on the map. Not gonna, none of us had an issue, so, but, they've already started, so I think they were then gonna start expanding away from the dots, and that,
That looks like what that is to me, too.
Post it on the website.
Post it on the website, thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
Hey,
So there's that. I thought there was something else, but I'm toast and I can't remember what it was.
I hear you.
I am.
take a vacation.
I know, huh? Can you remember, was it it? Did I forget
Okay.
anything? Yeah.
I think you were gonna remind them that tonight's your year anniversary.
Oh, yeah, your anniversary, yeah, that's right. Guys wanna go into executive session tonight, and give me a review? No, just kidding.
Buying beers.
Hey,
No, but that's all I got.
We did talk about that though, and that is part of his contract,
Yeah.
and so we should, I'm not saying we should do that tonight, but I'm
No.
just saying we
Right.
should outline a process for that
Yeah.
to happen, right?
Yes. No question.
I mean, it's part of his contract,
Yeah,
we're
no,
obligated to do
no,
that.
I don't disagree, it was on my mind the other day, discussing.
Typically, like, maybe, and this is just a suggestion, but in the past, typically, like, for example, next meeting, we could have a executive session. You would not be part of it. We could say our
Yeah.
moans, groans, complaints, and happiness, and the chair gets the beauty of writing
Yeah,
a nice review,
So-
and then we can look at it, and then he can sit down with the town manager and review it.
what I was gonna ask everybody, and like I said, I had thought about this, is yes, write something up in paragraph form, and what I will do is I'll assemble all that, and then we can have a discussion, so you get it to me in a week. I'm gonna do the same, I'll probably ask our previous chair to write a paragraph as well, because he had a lot to do with Jerry's first year, so we get input from him, and we'll collect that all together and have ourselves a little discussion.
Could we also include Jerry doing a self-assessment, because
Yeah.
we had talked last time about how we're not involved in the day-to-day operations that he's, right? So could that also be part of it?
That and his goal setting for next year would be good, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd be happy to talk about my boss.
I think it's,
I have thought about that as well.
I just,
I didn't say a word.
no, but I do wanna give a big shout out to the staff, because, I mean, we really got a good team going here, and we're firing on all cylinders, we're communicating, things are really, really pretty good, and if it wasn't for the staff that do all the work, this town, we'd be struggling, and we're doing pretty good, we really are.
I think a
So
lot
I
of that is
think-
also a testament to you. I
Well,
think that you've really changed the culture here a lot. I really do. Things have, I can see a significant difference in a year.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with
Thanks.
you being here, so thank you.
it's a team. It really is, and they're just great, so I couldn't be happier. They're awesome, so that's all I got.
Thank you. So that goes into our next thing, so we will put that on the agenda for next meeting. Were there any other meeting items?
Yeah, the only thing I want to put on the agenda is, discussing, like, what the process is if I want to suggest moving a meeting.
Okay.
Just because I was looking at my October schedule and I'm on vacation for both of our meeting weeks.
Okay.
And though I know everyone might like to have me out of their hair for a full month, if we could shift one of those a week back, I'd love to.
I actually, can we like
So
have a
just
poll
talk about
of?
it next time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just wanted,
Let's
I just
talk
wanna
next
talk
time
about that
about that,
process of
yeah.
changing
Okay.
a meeting.
Okay.
And we have done that before with having a lot of outages, so.
Yeah, we didn't have a quorum.
If we never quorum, so we should keep each other's
It's just, the only
schedule.
reason I bring it up is because it's gonna be 2 meetings in a row, I just have vacation.
I get it.
Thank you
I,
for that.
That's definitely, we gotta keep that, we'll see if that works, to move something around. Okay. Consent agenda, do I have a motion to accept the content?
So moved.
Motion to accept the consent agenda, or I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved. Or
So
second.
Joe seconds it. Any discussion? In favor? Passes unanimously. Now we got some warrants to sign, upcoming meetings, Conservation
Jerry,
Committee
where's my stickies?
on 8:30. Union Church Committee, 8:31, those are both at the town office. Planning Board meeting on 9/6 at the town office. And we have our next select board meeting on 9/12 and a follow-on meeting on 9/26, already in September. We have, I don't believe, any reason to go into executive session. We're all set. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask a process question?
Certainly.
Before we, thank you. It's my understanding that we're not recording, I'm asking because of these upcoming meetings, that we're not recording all the meetings.
We're trying to, I believe, aren't we? Yeah, yeah. Yep,
Okay.
Are you going streaming or recording?
right.
It's 2 different.
I thought that I was told that there were two specific Conservation Commission and Union Church that were not,
So last Union Church was done offsite at the Union Church outside,
okay,
so that one wasn't recorded.
Right.
okay,
Conservation Commission, I don't think we've ever recorded them.
okay. Is there a reason why we wouldn't do all, is it like because you have to be here to do that, or is it a person?
Someone has to.
Does it can it be someone on the committee that does it?
So,
I guess so. Devin has to set it up in the software, so that's another first step. Then someone here has to be responsible for being able to go to the computer and do it. But there's 2 different versions, there's the streaming and then there's just the record as you go.
Right.
So I think streaming, to set it up, is a little bit more time, and then record as you go, you would just record it and then upload it to YouTube the next day.
So is having a person on the committee that's tasked with recording, and then it gets set up whenever and then it gets posted whenever the person is here that can post,
You know,
is that,
you can do that.
is that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
we'd have to show
Train
them how
all
to
the
do it.
secretaries,
Yeah,
so
train
that each
everybody
committee
to do
had
it.
to do it.
okay.
don't know.
I think we like spend the money, like the ARPA funds to like upgrade the technology and, that type of thing, and there are people who are asking about it, so I think if it's not a difficult thing and it doesn't require any additional staff time, I think we should.
Yeah, we
She
can,
just brought something up, to get into that back room requires a master key that opens all the doors in this building. So that's another level of, just handing out keys to someone to
anybody.
record.
Could you do Conservation Commission because you're on it and you already have a key?
Yeah, but I might not be on it forever. So,
Right. In the interim. We can talk about it later. It sounds like
Okay.
it's turning into a discussion.
do I,
it is.
do I
wasn't
have a motion
attempting
to
that.
adjourn?
so moved.
Okay, all in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all for this evening.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just asking about the sometime in October.
Well, what I was saying, if we could
Still on
consult,
mic.
okay, do you want me to shut it off?
No, just
Oh.
wait till she shuts it off.
Careful, wait a second.